the City of Grand Haven Special City Council Work Session of June 6th, 2022 will hereby come to order. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Lowe.
Here.
Cummins.
Here.
McLaughlin.
Here.
Fritz.
Here.
McNally.
Here. We need approval of the agenda. Is that the order of business? I would entertain, for a work session, Pat, do we need?
I don't think so. I think we can just get right into the meat.
Let's move straight to the discussion items, if that's okay. Have we got a lead on this one?
Yeah, I would like to just start out by reminding City Council of a motion at the April 25th, 2022 City Council meeting where the City Council directed staff to provide a recommendation on the creation of a Sustainability and Energy Committee, or Commission, under the city charter responsible to the City Council. I've looked into that, and very clearly in the charter, the creation of boards and commission is set up by section 7.14, where there are 6 different commissions, boards created. Airport, cemetery, community center, harbor, library, and parks and rec. Of course, the library board was rendered moot when in 1999 the district library was formed. It became an entity separate from the city, so there was no more library board. But those other 5 are still there. And I think the charter was intentionally drafted to maintain a smaller form of government, so it didn't just continually tend to expand as new things came up. It recognized that there's always going to be probably more demand out there for public services and less resources, and that seems to be borne out. There's always more things we want to get done. And so the charter, I think, was pretty intentionally limiting the numbers of boards and committees. However, it does recognize that sometimes things may come up where you would want to create a citizen advisory committee. So there's 2 sections in section 7.21. The first section allowing City Council to create advisory committees for studying and investigating specific problems or needs, but it limits those boards and commissions to 2 years. They exist for 2 years, and then if the work's not done yet, they can exist for another year. And I think that was an effort to, again, maintain, not keep creating more boards and committees and let things continue to expand. There's a second section that allows the city manager to appoint citizen committees to give staff advice on specific issues, and those can go on. Those are permitted to go on as being staff advisory committees, and that's exactly what happened with the Environment and Natural Resources Commission. It was created in about 2000 by then Mayor Lystra and the City Council to address environment and natural resources type issues, and it was shortly after I was appointed here that they were wanting to extend that, and we looked at these sections and said, well, let's just set it up under the manager one. It can still do the same things, but be a staff-driven thing, can respond to City Council. And over the years, it's just been sort of listed with all the other boards and commissions on your website as a board or commission. And as environmental issues have come up, they've been referred to that board. And they certainly have given reports repeatedly to City Council. And in recent years, since probably before the start of COVID, they were not meeting very regularly. There weren't a lot of items coming their way, and it was difficult to get attendance. So they hadn't been meeting much. I gave you in a report tonight just an excerpt from the city's website on boards and commissions to explain a little bit about what they're about and when they meet and who the current members are. There's 4 pretty dedicated members on that board right now, and that Eric Law is the administrative liaison. I think this is a great opportunity with the fresh interest. I won't say it's renewed, because I think we've always had a great abiding interest in the environment and being sustainable. But this particular City Council has expressed an interest in being a little more activist and perhaps creating the energy plan. There's been a lot of discussion about that, and we want to put some form and substance to that. And so I think this existing committee, those 4 individuals who are on there now, are fairly accomplished environmental experts in their own field. Pam Blau is a landscape architect of some renown. Joe Bolin worked for West Shore Environmental. Kirk Colella is I'm not sure who he's working for now, but Dan Small is also an environmental scientist, professional. So they're good people to have on there, and you could create it however many members you want on it, and however many city residents versus non-residents, maybe different types of backgrounds of those people, however you want to get that thing composed, and get it ramped up as a sustainability and energy commission, and perhaps assign them as their first topic to develop a mission statement. I think it might be to put some better definition together on what our energy plan might look like, who ought to be involved. I know there's been some interest in regional collaboration on that, maybe not just a city approach. So I think it would be a good idea. I appreciate the opportunity to report on this tonight, and maybe we put together that broader regional effort and get that committee impaneled. I think you could all name some individuals who've been very vocal lately through this last cycle, the election cycle. A lot of folks became engaged. I won't name names. You all know who they are. They come to our meetings a lot. Those would be good people to put on this. Also, a couple students perhaps from the Grand Haven Green Committee, where those could maybe be floating seats, as those students, usually the ones in leadership positions, are upperclassmen, and maybe they matriculate, and you'd grab a couple of incoming seniors to stay on this commission. Walter Davis would be a good, and I know I said I wouldn't name names, but he happened to have been here at your last meeting and presented you with a really nice report from the Green Committee. So I think you're onto something. I'd be happy to take your feedback and maybe get those ideas distilled into a functioning board type format, being maybe a little more than just the city. Invite some representation from our energy department, which is our Board of Light and Power, see if they'd like to participate, and get something up and running. And you can run it for at least 3 years as a committee that directly reports to council. If they haven't gotten the job done that you expect to have done by then, maybe you want to take another crack at it and set it up again, or have it fall back to that staff level committee once again. But I'd follow your lead, whatever direction you'd like me to take at this time.
People got questions? Because I got somebody. I'm happy to let you guys go first. Okay.
Well, thank you, Pat. I think that's what I'm looking for, especially what I would like to see, though, is tasked with something very specific as part of, some of their other responsibilities, is specifically to come up with a path to an energy plan for the city, as well as a broader sustainability plan, which could be, as you say, part of a more community-wide, type effort. And I have seen a lot of work. There were a number of individuals who came to speak who had experience in developing such plans. Brittany, I can't remember Brittany's last name. Good, Brittany Good. They were just, so it was just a way of how do we harness some of the energy, and people who are way smarter on this topic than I am, and harness that energy and that desire to do something, but also give them a little bit of some direction by saying, help us out, come up with something, a path, to an energy plan, or a way in which go and evaluate whether or not we should do this broader sustainability plan with the broader, other communities, but come back with something for council, so, to consider. Anyway, that's my input on it, but it sounds like, I think you nailed it.
Ryan?
So it sounds like, I heard a couple of things there, Pat. It sounds like what you're recommending is that we take maybe a stronger look at the 2 to 3 year option, the goals that maybe we're looking at, versus maybe revamping the natural resources type committee that you already have at a staff level, just because of the reporting structure and that piece. Is that what you're thinking?
I was thinking using the current people we have and the structure we have, but adding to it and sort of breathing new life into it as a body that perhaps reports to city council quarterly going forward. Maybe set a goal that maybe by the end of 1 year they have established a particular plan. We can work on some mission language at their first couple meetings, but I think if you were to re-impanel with a new name, I kind of like the new name. I don't know about the initials, the SEC, people might get confused, but Sustainability and Energy Commission is different. It sounds like something new, fresh, with a specific goal of tying together some of the things, because you've got these different, not necessarily competing, parallel interests. You've got the Green Committee working, you've got Ryan Cotton and the group that wants to do the energy plan, and so try to tie these things together and put some form and substance in the form of a regional energy and sustainability plan, perhaps with some carbon reduction goals for our community, maybe some ideas about it. And I know I'm very excited about the composting operation that popped up this week. Thanks to our DPW, they just went for it and did it, and it looks really cool out there. I went out and threw a banana peel in there today. I was very happy to do that. So it's up and running.
Long time to break down, Pat.
Well, it's
It's
4 weeks. If they chop it up and do it right in 4 weeks, it should become something usable. But we'll see. So it's going to be a very important committee to try to tie some of these things together. And you've got significant discussion and energy going into talking about our future energy, and I think now is a very ripe time to put that together and set it up as a new SEC that has some specific marching orders. And Eric Law is a key staff member that I think could really help us move the ball down the field.
Yeah, no, I think the way you just explained it there makes a lot of sense. I know when, kind of knitting together all the different folks that have had some maybe different focuses and interests that seem to be coming back to this sustainability and energy related topic. So I really like, your point about youth. I think it's extremely important to have at least, one or two, members of our community that are representing our future generations is extremely important. I agree that the BLP, I think, in some ways should have some kind of representation, especially as it relates to, the various energy pieces. We previously discussed, at least in a letter back to the Grand Haven Energy Organization, area industry, businesses, and then residents. So, whatever that combination looks like, it's trying to find that sweet spot, right, with a right number of people that you could still be productive and keep moving along. And that might be a challenge with different interests, but that's all my comments at this point.
Okay, Kevin?
Pat, thank you very much for putting this together. Yeah, I agree with Ryan and Karen. I do believe that trying to get the right mix of people will be challenging. I absolutely agree that we have to have some youth on there, maybe the BLP and so forth. I think Pat, maybe you can help us with the number, the number of committee members. I can't imagine, 15 or 17 people. I think that'd be pretty tough, but it's going to be really tough to get those. There's a lot of interest out there. If people are interested, should they contact you? Should they contact us? How do you want to do that?
Applications, wouldn't you think?
Yeah, that's fine. I'm just
That could be, maybe step one is getting the individuals signed up.
Yeah.
And running them by the current 4 members of the NRC and Eric to flesh out maybe a dozen members, knowing that
Okay.
a couple miss every meeting, so a dozen people that would.
I think a dozen sounds not unmanageable, but I kind of like the Planning Commission 9 number. I like an uneven number in case there's a close vote, and 9 is, I think, a number I've watched work effectively together. That's just some input there. 12, if they could break into subcommittees, which they're not allowed to do, right? Mm-hmm. I don't know, I'm asking. I mean, the DDA has committees. Can we create something that can put an energy committee? I look at the sustainability, I'm listening to all the energy input, but I'm really kind of interested in the tree cover part of sustainability, because I think we have some significant tree diseases that are hitting our forest canopy, and if we don't address it relatively soon, they won't be sustainable. So I see a broader mission than energy, and that would be my input. But if we did as many as 12, my question would be, can they break into committees and work on things as work groups, because that would, to me, be more effective, but I'm not sure about how the Open Meetings Act affects that. And before you answer that, I'm sorry I skipped poor Mike at the end. Mike, have you got any input?
No, keep going, finish up, I'll wait for
I
you.
think I'm good. Go
You
ahead.
sure?
Yeah.
I really like the idea, Pat, of having a committee in that for like 2 years and extended, because that's what we did with the NRC there. And we, it's been going since I've been here. It's been, 19 years now, so it's not like it's gonna be at the end, because it's always something out there, but I like combining them all together. When you get a flux of different things, we can get a lot more done. I think it gives us more energy to move forward on all fronts, especially for like the sustainability, the energy, and also for natural resources and stuff on that. If they all get together, all of them have, what we pick is going to be the cream of the crop. We have great people in this town that are very smart, very intelligent on different things, and once you put them together, they'll come together. I don't know about the 9 number, but it has to be an odd number, probably an odd number of some
How big
sort.
would you go?
I think it depends on the interest.
Yeah, if you end up with it, but you might go up to like 11 or something. I don't think an even number would be a good thing, because I want them to make a decision, and you want to make sure it's done. That's why we have 5 here. We can at least come up with a decision. It's an odd number, so you at least get a majority of some sort. But yeah, I understand where you're coming from on that point of view. I understand it, but if we can get 11, I mean, there's a lot of people out there that are very passionate and very diverse, and they're very good at different things.
And there are a lot of different issues.
I mean,
that
like,
are-
we got Dr.
fall in
Peter
this
Angelo.
community.
I mean, he's really into energy, if you want to do that, but there's lots of people out there who are very well versed on it, so I have them contact Pat and get a list out to us or whatever, and that's my point. I don't think they need to contact us, that we can tally them, and then we can go through there. It'll be our decision at the end anyways.
Well, that's the question I have, Pat. If you have the city manager committees, you can put those together without having to go through city council, so that's
Yep.
a faster and more flexible way to go. Are there any other process differences? Would that committee be able to divide and conquer, as Madam Mayor suggested, on various issues and work more effectively that way? What are your thoughts on that?
It's a very, very good point, because if the city council appoints them and they report to the city council, they're gathering in pursuit of policy recommendations that will become eventual decisions, very much subject to the Open Meetings Act. They break into committees, Open Meetings Act, so these are all publicly noticed.
Okay,
Yeah,
but it's more overhead.
it's a little more cumbersome, because you need to do the agendas and the meetings and the minutes and the follow-up, and it gets to be a staffing issue. We'd need to have some staffing applied to it. The city manager committees, we've often done, they're more like task force. They're doing homework, and in between meetings, they're following up and coming back, and it's a little more staff-driven, and it's perhaps a little less cumbersome. And they're technically not public meetings, they're staff meetings, where we get together and everybody, we did it with the paid parking, just to try to flesh out all the difficulties in that. So there's good and bad with both of them. If the city council impanels it, I believe it would be subject to the Open Meetings Act, and we'd get used to it. We just publish the agendas, and if the public wanted to show up, wonderful, probably recruit them. Be careful, if you show up, you'll end up on the committee. So we could do it either way. It sounded like council wanted a committee that they were going to name, set up, and now it does become, we'd probably have to have somebody from the clerk's office help us with the meeting notification and minutes, and then we'll need some staff. And I'm thinking our new planner, Brian Urquhart, is starting, and we've just gotten named a silver level Michigan Green Community, and that sets up a really nice framework to follow, and it hits on tree cover, energy, sustainability, it hits on all these things. So I'm thinking we might want to use that as a template and continue to pursue those things, get to be a gold committee, a gold community next year. That would be our goal. And it's all spelled out. If you look up Michigan Green Communities, you can go through the checklist and you'll see what I'm talking about. It's very well organized by the Michigan Municipal League, and I think the Township Association, I'm not sure, but it's a collaboration.
Can I ask a couple questions about the existing committee? So they've been in place, even though it's theoretically a 2-year gig, they've been in place, maybe not the same people, but the committee's been in operation for many, many years?
Yes.
Yes.
But we pulled it out of the council realm and put it into the manager realm so
Yep.
that it could continue.
Yep, okay, and do they only work on things that, like, you give them tasking, you say, I could use a recommendation on this, would you guys look at this? And if so, how often, like, do they meet regularly, or do they meet, ad hoc, you know, as needed?
As needed, and the air kind of came out of the balloon a little the last couple of years. They haven't been meeting much at all, maybe a couple times over the last couple of years. So it would be, I think, a great deal of our energy on energy went towards discussing BLP issues the last couple of years. And that probably consumed any time you guys had to talk about, you know,
Other environmental issues?
yeah, environmental issues. We're mostly focused on that, so now maybe we're coming through that. We've got a little more clarity. We could use some help reviewing the Harbor Island things, and I think this would be a good committee to set up. Council committee, plan it for 2 years, see how it looks. If you need to, you know, extend it for a year, we do that. And if it has to keep on going again, then we convert it into a staff committee, and they continue to give good advice on important issues. And you could always put a charter amendment out there. You could change a charter and say, it's time. You know, back in 1959, maybe having an environmental committee wasn't a priority, but maybe in 2022 or 23, you might decide it's time to put that to the voters and see if they want to formally establish a permanent presence.
So Pat, the 6 that are listed are charter created,
Yes.
but we have many other boards and commissions, and are all of them manager-driven?
Well, that's a good question for your attorney, because I've often wondered about some of these. It's like, well, yeah, there's legislation. You've got an historic commission and a human relations commission. You've set up some of these other ones, and they work. And I just don't know that anybody's ever questioned it.
Those, though, come through state statute. The Historic District Commission comes through Michigan Act 169 of 1970.
And the
The Planning
DDA.
Commission, their land use rights and other kind of things. So that's where they get their authority and power. You're saying through the charter, these are the ones that we can
Yes.
set up.
Yep.
And so our decision is, if we want it to report to council and restructure this, it's got to be a task force for two years,
2
which
years,
we
and then
would
another year if needed.
confirm appointments, and then beyond that, we would see where we're at. Okay.
Or we set it up now.
As just a
with
city manager
right,
committee.
As a city manager committee with the understanding that sustainability is likely going to be
For
a
a long
long-term topic.
You can do that also.
Pardon?
We can do that also.
Yeah.
If it's not as cumbersome,
There you go.
as Pat said.
It'd be
I
faster.
mean, it'd be faster, they don't have to go through the
The process.
meetings and,
Yep.
yeah. I'm fine with that, if I'm just one person, but I'm fine with, if it's okay with, well, Pat doesn't
You're fine
care.
with which one? I'm sorry, I'm not understanding.
No, we do.
The city manager directive, I think, is what Kevin's saying,
Yeah.
and Mike is saying.
Yeah,
How about you guys?
I think this is we're setting this policy direction, we're asking for policy advice back, and some of these things are gonna require some funding, and, you know, I mean, we could always give our policy director to our city manager to carry out, and he's using that as an advisory way to carry it out, or we're asking for somebody to report back to us with some direct policy advice and recommendations, I guess, is the 2 ways that I see
Oh, I
it,
see.
so.
I guess my perspective is, why not start off with the city manager committee, and then this council can see how that's going. We can get the advice of the city manager's office on whether or not that's working out okay. If we wanted, you know, I'm okay.
Do we
Either
want
way.
Okay with
to give
city
some
manager.
parameters for size of the board?
Yeah, I'll get this
Wanna see
rolling,
what
and then
policy?
you'll get copies of every agenda and every minutes. Those task forces we've done on short-term rentals, on marijuana, we had one on, I just mentioned the parking, and you guys got all the minutes, and they're all public records.
Right.
You know, they're all foiable, these aren't secret committees.
Right.
All of the materials and all the outputs are totally public, so you'll be getting those updates. And if it's not sufficient, we can revisit it and reestablish it as a council committee. So 9 or 11, I think we're gonna have a lot of interest, so I think we're gonna wanna go with 11, just because we've heard a lot of feedback, and I heard some names tonight, and I can think of 11 people pretty quickly that have shown an interest, so, you know, we'll see what we can get set up, and maybe by your next meeting, and we will put the call out, at least maybe by your next meeting, we'll have a list of possible candidates, and if you all wanna help me get some names together, send them my way.
Okay.
Will do.
Is that good?
Good.
Okay, thank you, Pat. All right. let's
I
hope
left
we-
Ben 5 minutes.
Ben, are you there?
Ben's right here. And
Ben,
Tony.
you want to come up and talk to us about the airport, and then do you want to, we can adjourn you guys and bring them in, it might be simpler, if you don't mind, Ben, adjourn him. Okay, so here's, that doesn't mean, yes, I'm sorry, but basically, we'll adjourn, we'll reconvene with the regular meeting at 7:30. We got a few, things, procedural things to get out of the way, and then you'll be the first item up. Is that okay? All right, thank you. Then I'm going to adjourn the work session. Everybody please settle down and settle into your seats.
So he sends me some Sunday.
Thank you. The City of Grand Haven regular city council meeting of June 6, 2022 is hereby called to order. Would the clerk please call the roll?
McLaughlin,
Here.
Fritz,
Here.
Lowe,
Here.
Cummins,
Here.
McNally.
Here. Doesn't look like we've got anyone for invocation here tonight, is that right? Oh,
We do, in
we
fact.
do in fact. I'm sorry I can't introduce you because you're not on my agenda. Could you please introduce yourself, and will everyone please stand for the agenda and, or I'm sorry, for the invocation and remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I'm happy to. I'm Bob DeVries, a pastor at Covenant Life Church down here, downtown Grand Haven.
Thank you,
Let's-
Dr. Reese.
You bet. Let's pray together, shall we? Father in heaven, we pause on this busy day to recognize that you are Lord of all, and we thank you for your many abundant blessings to us, for the life we enjoy, for the measure of health that we need to fulfill our callings, and for the spirit of peace and friendship that we enjoy in this community. I thank you for all who are present here tonight and for those who graciously give of their time and their talent to serve our community. I pray for our mayor, for our city manager and city officials, and for these assembled council members, that as they engage in the agenda and decisions before them, that you, God, would graciously grant them wisdom to govern amid the conflicting interests and issues that they face, the sensitivity to the welfare and true needs of our community and its people, a commitment to justice and rightness in all things, confidence to do what is good and fitting for the city of Grand Haven and its residents, the ability to work together in harmony even when there is honest disagreement, and personal peace in their lives and joy in the work to which they have been called. It's all these things, God, that we pray in your most blessed name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please be seated. Okay. I think we're going to start with I need a motion to approve the agenda. Can I get a motion to that effect?
I'll move.
I'll second it.
Is there any discussion? I'm going to pull from the consent agenda, item D. And I'd like that placed, I guess, as new business. Item 13H, does that sound right?
Yep. Yeah, before we get out of that, we do have the reappointments to the boards and commissions, number 5.
Usually
You
do
want
that
to do
first.
that first?
Yeah, that would
That's
be
how the
number
agenda's
5.
written.
It is on the agenda as written, I understand. All right, let's do the reappointments to boards and commissions. Can I get a motion to approve the reappointments?
I'll make a motion to approve the reappointments as presented.
And I'll second it.
And have we got any discussion, or has anyone got any questions?
No.
All right, would the clerk please call the roll?
Fritz,
Yes.
Lowe,
Yes.
Cummins,
Yes.
McLaughlin,
Yes.
McNally.
Yes. Okay, we have no new appointments, no oaths of office. We've got a motion to approve the consent and regular agendas
Yep.
as modified.
I have a question on item on the consent agenda, 11O. as it pertains to Article 16F. That's on our regular agenda under new business. Or wait a minute, let's see, where is it? No, sorry, it's D. Under 13D, we have consideration of a city council resolution to place a millage ballot around cost of providing public safety services. Those two are linked. The section of the contract, Article 16F.
What's your recommendation, Karen?
They kind
wanna
of
pull
go,
it?
they
You
go
wanna pull it?
together, they go together. The
They-
clause in 16F is about presenting a millage.
Right, I
increase.
understand that, but I don't think they're necessarily linked.
So that would be my question. Is it open-ended enough that if we, whatever our action is later on?
Correct. It's a permissive clause. It says if the council pursues voter support and if there is voter support. So if you don't
So if
pursue
we
voter
don't do
support,
it,
it's
it doesn't,
moot.
okay.
Yeah.
Then I withdraw.
Okay.
the
Thank you.
need to-
All right, so we have a motion to approve the consent agenda as modified? Is that true?
I don't know what your motion and second was, but.
Could I get a motion to approve the consent agenda as modified?
So moved.
And regular.
And regular agenda?
Pardon?
And regular
And the
agenda.
regular agenda.
I'll second it for discussion.
Okay.
What discussion?
I want to discuss.
What discussion have we got?
No, nothing.
All right,
He's just
is
having
there
fun.
discussion?
No, we're just setting our agenda for
All right.
this evening, I think. That's-
Then will the clerk please call the roll?
Lowe,
Yes.
Cummins,
Yes.
McLaughlin,
Yes.
Fritz,
Yes.
McNally.
Yes. This is the opportunity, first call to the audience, one of two opportunities during this meeting. At this time, members of the audience may address council on any item, whether on the agenda or not. Those addressing council are asked to provide their name and address and will be limited to 3 minutes of speaking time. Council will hear all comments for future consideration but will not have a response at this time. Those not physically present who would like to call in may dial 616-935-3285. If it continues ringing, please remain on the line until your turn. We will take all callers. The chair recognizes former Mayor Roger Bergman, current County Commissioner.
Thank you. Thank you, Your Honor. My name is Roger Bergman, 214 Washington Avenue. I'm here just to announce that I am indeed running for a county commission for my 6th term. I believe that in the past 10 years, I've worked hard to represent not only Grand Haven, but Northwest Ottawa County. And before that, I represented Grand Haven City for 12 years. I've always tried to work across the aisle with people from all backgrounds so that we can move forward in our communities. And my intent is to continue to do that. We have a wonderful county that we're part of, that you all are part of. We have one of the best park systems in the state, if not the best park system. We have one of the lowest tax rates. We have the healthiest county in the state of Michigan, as was just recognized recently. We have one of the highest, if not the highest, agricultural output. We work hard on farmland preservation because that's important for the future generations of our county. And that's just to name a few things. We also have a AAA credit rating. And we're working to make Ottawa County this indeed place that we call the county where you belong. I feel very strongly, since we've gotten our DEI director in the county, that who has helped not only the employees, but myself as well, understand how important it is for us to be able to work with everyone in the county, whether they're different races, different nationalities, different religions, with disabilities, you name it, sexual desires, sexual orientation, whatever. I have learned a lot, and I hope that Grand Haven City, I think, has made use of some of our talents of our DEI director as well. Is that right, Pat? I think you have, correct? Some of the talents, yes?
Yes.
Yes, yeah. So, anyway, thank you for listening to my babbling on and telling you about what I've done, and I look forward to doing it again. So, any support that I can get in the future, I would really appreciate. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Roger. Mr. Kraus?
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. Council members, my name is Paul Kraus, and I'm from Park Township, although I feel like an honorary member of Grand Haven because I work at the courthouse here and the prosecutor's office as Senior Assistant Prosecuting Attorney. I lead our family division that handles our child abuse cases for the county, and I serve on our child death review team to review every child death in Ottawa County to try and prevent future deaths from occurring in the future. Now some good news, I don't know if you heard, but the governor signed into law a bill that adds a 5th Circuit Court judgeship for Ottawa County. So it's a brand new position, it's a non-incumbent position that is going to handle our family law cases here in Ottawa County. And so my background is 17 years as an attorney is just very uniquely situated for this position. I started as an assistant attorney general for 9 years handling child abuse cases. I then went to Cunningham Dahlman Law Firm in Holland, where I handled a family law docket, where I did guardianships, adoptions, child abuse cases, divorce, and custody work. And from there, received a call from Lee Fisher at the time on behalf of Ron France asking me to join the prosecutor's office because the office needed some help on child abuse cases. And I've served in that capacity now for 5, going on 6 years. So all of that work is just very unique to this position before the county. I'm excited to put my name in for that position. I've been with people on their best day when they've adopted a child. I've been with people on their worst day when they've gone through a divorce or lost a loved one and had to stand up for them and defend victims in court. And I'll bring those skill sets to the judgeship. Been humbled by an outpouring of support in the community. Judge Jonas recently endorsed me, as has Sheriff Kempker, Prosecutor France, Prosecutor Fisher, a number of community leaders, including Darcy Fluharty with our Child Advocacy Center. And I would just be humbled for your support, and please reach out if I can ever be of assistance. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Oliver, what you got for us tonight?
How you guys doing? Hopefully you're doing good. I'm here to just say 2 things.
Wait,
First, I live
state
at...
your-
I got you. I'm going right there right now. Oliver Champagne, 309 North Lake Avenue, Spring Lake, Michigan. So while I'm no longer in the town, I spend a lot of time here since I'm a Y camp counselor, full day. I also work at Anna's house, and I also work in American Dunes. And I spent most of my life in here in Grand Haven. So 2 big issues is you guys already started the work session. I hope that we can continue moving forward on the Sustainability Committee, and I'm hoping that it's not just going to be a 2-year thing, but we can end up getting that on the ballot and extending that, because the word sustainability doesn't really make sense just on 2 years.
That's not you,
I know.
Oliver. You can continue.
And then second thing, we're going to be reviewing the regulatory, planning commission stuff for recreational marijuana, and I hope that you guys can approve that today. The Planning Commission recommends approval, and I've already been here 4 or 5 times saying why I think it would be important, it would help the city a lot, and it would also help local businesses in general. So I hope you guys have a wonderful day. It's great to see you all, and thank you.
Hello, my name is Landon Bartley, 40 Pearl Street Northwest, Grand Rapids. It's good to see you, council members. Tom. Thank you for your service to the city and for your work. My background is as a planner for the city of Grand Rapids for 14 years, and in that position I also administered the cannabis ordinance, the medical cannabis ordinance, I strongly urge you as a council today to vote yes on allowing adult use cannabis in the city of Grand Rapids. This is allowing the adult use cannabis industry to operate. By voting yes, you would, I guess, support existing medical cannabis businesses that have already been approved. You would reflect the will of the voters who voted in the highest levels of Ottawa County to say yes to adult use cannabis. You would also allow the city to recoup some of the excise tax revenues that had Grand Haven opted in last year. For example, 4 licenses this year would have netted the city about $225,000 in change in tax revenues. So I do hope that you decide to opt in for adult use cannabis, fully legalize this. There are very few land use reasons to deny it. There is very little, if any, impact on crime, very little, if any, impact on youth use. The only impact that really comes out of it is traffic, and that goes away very quickly. So it's the right decision. I hope you make it, and thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
Can I ask you a question, sir?
Yes, ma'am.
Are you employed by the city of Grand Rapids?
No, I'm not.
Could you tell me who your current employer is?
I'm a self-employed consultant, actually.
Self-employed consultant for the cannabis industry?
For difficult land uses.
Is that really appropriate to ask this gentleman what his profession
Well-
is? He's here to give comments. He stated his name and his address. That's all he's required to do. He shouldn't have to provide who he's working for. That's his private
Brian?
business.
I'm allowed to ask questions. He agreed to answer them. He's come up and represented that he works for the city of Grand Rapids as a cannabis coordinator for 14 years.
Oh, I'm sorry, I
When cannabis
did.
has only been legal in Michigan for 4.
I don't think that's what he said. I hope you know that you don't have to answer any questions. you
I'm
feel you
happy
wanna
to,
answer,
though. So my background was as a city planner for the city of Grand Rapids for 14 years. For about 3 of those years, I was a medical cannabis administrator. I left the city in July of 2020. And now I'm a consultant. I do land use planning for a variety of industries, but I do have cannabis clients.
Thank you very much.
None that would actually benefit from the opt-in here, but I think that some would. So I hope you consider opting in.
So you don't live in Grand Haven?
No, I don't, but I'm here all the time.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Disrespectful, I'll tell you.
Madam Mayor, City
If you
Council,
want to discuss, Mayor,
Stand up one second. Hold up one second. Go ahead, Ryan.
Mayor, you seem to have an issue with folks coming and speaking to us. I appreciate folks that want to come and talk to us, whether they live here or not. We have business owners who are here who don't live in our city. We welcome all comments, and it seems that you have a problem with folks coming and speaking to us, and I take issue with that. So,
And I think you're misrepresenting my position,
Okay.
and I take issue with what you say.
all right.
Please continue.
okay. All right. Madam Mayor, City Council, my name is Ron Strang. I'm the chairman of the Cemetery Board. And we're looking for some people. We're starting to get kind of thin, and we need to start doing some interviews and getting a couple people on there.
Ron, can I say something? That's on me. I have 3 or 4 candidates. I'm in the process right now of trying to vet a slate of candidates for a variety of boards, but I know the cemetery board is short, and it's my fault. So I will own up to that and tell you I'm aware of the problem and coming to help.
Okay, well,
But if you got more to say, I'm
Sure,
happy
if you
to-
need help, I've done
You've
a
got,
few,
have you got some people?
I've done a few interviews in my life.
Did they,
so
okay, well, that's good to know.
If you need something, you have my phone number.
I do.
And feel free anytime to give me a call.
All right,
And
thank
I'll
you.
come in and I'll pin them down.
Yep, but you have, I know the cemetery board's short, and I know that's on me, and I apologize.
Right, okay? All right, thank you very much.
You bet.
Hi, my name is Kelly Osterman, and I'm at 514 North Fifth Street. And I just wanted to make council aware, 3 months ago, unfortunately, our neighbor's house burned. And we've tried to find out how we can help with that. There was not insurance, and we knew right away that that was not the case. And so in the beginning, we offered to help pay to have the house taken down, and then have it, find out if there was some way to put that, a lien of some sort. And so now we are 3 months later, and the smell is atrocious. And 2 different occasions I've watched young people going into the building at night, into the house. So I do believe it is a life and safety issue at this point, and so I'm just kind of letting you know that we've tried to find out what the timeline is and how we can assist. I'd be willing to make calls on finding, a company. I did in the beginning, and they were about a week to 2 weeks out. They could come and take out the house. They said between $10,000 and $12,000. So I'm just letting you know that as residents, I'm willing to help. I just can't seem to find out who to contact. We've talked to the building department. We've talked to the assistant city manager and asked for calls back and haven't heard anything, or we just keep getting bounced from department to department. So if there's anything we can do to
Ma'am,
help.
could you state your name one more time?
Kelly, and my last name is Osterman, with an O. So yeah, I'm willing to help. I just need to know who to,
And
how to
could you
take-
do me a favor and just write down your phone number and give it to me? And one of us will check on this and we'll get back to you. Would
What
that
is
be
the
all right?
property address?
So the property address is 519 5th Street, and I have pictures of the
It's in
house
Old
if you'd
Town.
like
Right on
to.
the corner.
It's right on, yeah.
It's right in the corner.
Yep.
I knew the owners that were there,
Great people,
absolutely.
absolutely
But-
great
but
people. And
catastrophically affected. Yeah.
I'm sorry?
Catastrophically affected.
Right, and I understand that the house has been sold already. There was a for sale sign, it already sold. So I mean, I don't feel like there was kind of a need for it to continue, still be there, because it's, it was not their fault. It's not an angry issue, it's just, okay, if there's a way that we can help. So yeah, I will write down my number and hand that to you.
I think it would be appropriate to let staff get back to you and let you know the status of this. We do have a Fire Insurance Withholding Act. We are holding money on this. So I got to find out what the status is. They're usually noticed. They have a certain amount of time to come into compliance. If they don't, we take it on and we tear it down for them. And we've got the
figured.
money.
Yep.
So I know we did withhold the money. That's about all I know right now. But I'll find out what the status is and make sure y'all get an update tomorrow.
Thank you, Pat.
Thank you, Kelly. And thanks for bringing it to our attention. I've gone by and seen it and gone, I wonder what's going on, and I should have asked more questions. Thank you. And thank you, Pat, for that input, because I'm sure that's true. Okay. Doug?
Saw him coming.
Hi, I'm Doug Vance, owner of Copper Post at 100 Washington. I had at your first meeting, you talked about people with experience, and one of the things on my list to talk about tonight was you have a number of, and it was brought up by others here already, you have a number of people in the city or that are willing, that are from, I have over 70 years experience with Grand Haven. I've been here since I was a little guy, or around. And I was just going to suggest that maybe you make a list of, and put out an offer to have people sign up on the list of people with various experience in life, business, city government, that you could possibly draw on when appropriate. I don't have any experience in energy. I don't want to be on a committee, on that committee, but there are other things. I have a lot of experience. I built a business from scratch to over $12 million, and I've been accused of being a serial entrepreneur, so I've got a lot of background experience. I would love to be able to offer my services at no charge if it would be appropriate and would help the city. So I'd really encourage you to put get that list going. Obviously, there's needs. I did a kind of a search, and Villanova University did a study with the departing of our city manager. I thought, well, maybe this might be the time to make some changes. And I would encourage you to maybe take a look at that and maybe build a stronger mayor-council city than a strong city manager city. I would, just throwing that out there. I think that might be a benefit to all of the city of Grand Haven, because you folks are elected. People know you, you know the people. We bring in city manager candidates. I mean, my recommendation would be let Ashley have it until she can't prove that she can do it. But, somebody that loves the city of Grand Haven, that wants to be here, that's not just a pass-through. I think that would be a benefit to the city. You're going to be talking about parking tonight, and of course I'm not going to leave without talking about parking. paid parking is not the answer. If you're gonna do that, then let's change the name of Grand Haven to not so Grand Haven. You know, we want people to come here and enjoy this city, and, you know, I can tell you, the parking, that the paid parking that's going on now with the chalk people going around with their chalk and stuff is not conducive to welcoming people to this city. But I encourage you to table that. I know you've done this study. I mean, I can't imagine why we spent the money we did, when my simple survey of going and talking to all the merchants was enough to say, we don't want it. Thank you.
Thank you, Doug.
Erica Layton, 175 112 Ridgemore Court in Grand Haven. Good evening, Mayor and City Council members. Tonight I'd like to address the Council on behalf of the Tri-Cities Historical Museum on the much debated issue of paid parking. As you're aware, the museum is located downtown on the corner of Washington and 2nd, and the implementation of a paid parking system would be felt by our visitors, our volunteers, our museum employees, and perhaps most importantly, our field trip students and their educators. Each year, the museum interacts with thousands of individuals, especially during the months of May through September. Last year in 2021, the museum provided educational programs for 100% of the Tri-Cities area elementary schools. The museum hosted a total of 45 individually scheduled in-house field trips at our museum downtown. The impact of that was over 1,300 students coming through our building downtown, accompanied by 608 adults. The majority of those field trips took place during the month of May, when paid parking would potentially begin with the city. Many schools that visit us are just outside the city limits, like Lake Hills, Robinson, Holmes, Spring Lake High School, Spring Lake Middle School, but we also have schools coming from out of the area, some as far away as Kalamazoo Christian. We have students from Muskegon Community College, Allendale Middle School, and a variety of Western Michigan homeschool groups. Schools already worry about the rising costs of buses, of gas for chaperones to drive their personal vehicles when accompanying students on field trips. In addition, your proposal would mean that they would not have to worry about paid parking downtown when attending those field trips. We pride ourselves on being accessible and free to our community. The museum has a small bus fund that is available when applied for by a school, but at this time it can only supply 2 bus trips for educators. The rising cost of everything is already a barrier to the field trip experience, and paid parking would further hinder students' ability to learn about local history. In addition to field trips, volunteers will also be impacted. Our museum is supported by a wonderful group of volunteers. We have 55 active volunteers who last year worked a total of 485 hours that they contributed free to the museum. This number was nearly triple in previous years, but of course we're still recovering from COVID. Paid parking creates a new system where volunteers work, and it costs them almost $1 per hour that they're volunteering. And unfortunately, the more they volunteer, the more it would cost them. Our volunteers, in terms of demographics, 80% of them are retired and over the age of 55, and the remaining 20% of our volunteers are students from local high schools and colleges. Paid parking would also have a negative impact on our employees. The museum currently employs 15 individuals. Of those 15, only 3 live within the city limits. And according to a memo that was previously posted on the cost of the paid program, or the paid parking, our employees would need to pay $100 for monthly passes for 5 months, costing each individual employee almost $500, costing the museum overall an additional $6,000 to cover parking fees for our employees. So in conclusion, the museum would not only, or the museum is not a for-profit business, but we consider ourselves to be part of that downtown business community. And like many of our downtown neighbors, we're facing challenges. And these challenges are not new to anyone. We're recovering from COVID. There's rising inflation, which means our dollar buys less. We have supply chain issues, leaving us waiting for products. Gas prices are hurting our volunteers, our employees, our visitors. We are short-staffed, so is everyone else in the nation. But my point is this. with the challenges that are facing our downtown businesses and the museum, why would council consider adding an additional stressor of paid parking downtown? And I would urge the city council to reconsider the motion. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Hello, my name is Chelsea McCoy, and I am the Programming and Marketing Librarian at Loudoun District Library. My home address is 86 Hamilton Avenue, Muskegon. I drive in here and work at the library every 4 days a week, 5 days a week sometimes. I wanted to introduce myself and say thank you for choosing to waive fees for the Seeds, Harp, and Guitar Show on July 21st at 7 p.m. at the Waterfront Stadium. The Stapletons are a group from Ohio who are coming in to sing sea shanties about the Great Lakes. We're very excited to host them, and the Waterfront is a perfect place to do that. Our summer reading program this year is called The Grand Adventure, and we're trying to celebrate the amazing things about Grand Haven with this program. It is going to be annual. And this program is a part of the way that we help our school system and parents and teachers prevent summer slide. It's happening, this is just one event happening in conjunction with this program. National research from the Dominican University finds that students who participate in public library summer reading programs scored higher on reading achievement tests at the beginning of the next school year than those who did not participate. And parents of children enrolled in a public library summer reading program reported that their children spent more time reading over the summer, read more books, and were well prepared for school in the fall. So we're really trying to make this fun, something that kids really want to participate in. We have grand prizes, and you being able to waive those fees helps us to offer more incentives for students and get them excited about reading. We had a grand opening to the adventure on Saturday. We had 650 people attend. It was really fun. I do have stickers for council for the Grand Adventure and my business card. If you ever have questions about what we're doing, I'd love to talk to you about it. We're definitely willing to partner as much as possible. We appreciate you appointing someone to our board every year, and I know I've met Kevin before and Pat, and we're just very thankful that helps us to be able to offer other things with our budget this year. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Good evening, Jim Hagan, 400 Lake. I would like to just speak a little bit about the sustainability and energy. I think it's a great idea. And as you know, my focus is on energy. And John Kinch and myself presented at the airport board at the last meeting. It was very well received. We got some feedback on where we had placed potential arrays. So not everybody loved the position. So we came up with another position coming in from Comstock into the hangars and up to the administration building. And it looks very promising. So I want to, and that by promising, I mean the equivalent of 170 homes. That's 1.14 gigawatt hours a year. So it can be quite substantial. So I want to ask you guys to challenge this committee to come up with some good energy ideas. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Rebecca Neal. I live at 1644 Franklin Avenue. I'm going to speak in to the adult use cannabis or marijuana ordinance. As some of you might know, I am one of your medical recipients. I own the property over on Jackson Street at 1025. Our hopes is that we take this medical establishment and we make it accessible to any adult over the age of 21. As some of you may know, my endeavors include anything in the form of alternative medicine, and accessibility is something that I feel strongly about. These efforts go towards bringing a bigger picture to what accessibility looks like. I think it's appropriate to consider where these laws have sat for the last 60 years and how these efforts, why they might set precedents. They're long overdue. And so we can benefit our community in more ways than that accessibility We know that it is a form of money that the taxable excise can go right back to our communities. Our previous ordinance in the medical was appropriate even from an adult use standpoint. And so I like to see that move forward. I am also a local constituent. I live here. I've lived here for the last 8.5 years. I actually have another business as well. And so I like to see that this move forward. We've waited a long time. I am obligated to 1 year of making this establishment accessible. That is per the ordinance that it currently stands. And I'm just really interested in getting my shovel in the ground and building onto a property that sits vacant and has sat vacant for many years. I appreciate your time. If you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them. Thank you.
Okay, moving on. We're going to move back into the continuation of the special work session, the special meeting, and I'm going to ask Ben Eniga to come up and talk to us about airport issues. Sorry, Ben. Pat didn't leave you much time. This seemed like when we break it up, it doesn't work very well.
My name is Ben Eniga, 14315 Briarfield Lane, Grand Haven. I am an airport board member and currently the chairman of the airport board. In our March meeting earlier this year, Skydive Grand Haven, which is a commercial operator at the airport, gave us a presentation of a clear span fabric hangar that they would like to construct on airport property. This hangar would be a 60 by 65 foot hangar. The ideal choice would be right adjacent to the hangar, the large 60 by 60 hangar furthest to the west on the airport property. And basically, after that March board meeting, the airport board held a special work session meeting on 4/12/22 and basically looked at what was proposed by Skydive Grand Haven and made sure it fit within our minimum standards for our airport, which we do have minimum standards. And at the conclusion of that meeting, we felt it did. And then on our April meeting, April 26th meeting, we voted on a recommendation to City Council, this recommendation, and I don't know if you can put up a picture of that fabric hangar structure pad, or it's in that PowerPoint that I sent you. Just so you know what we're looking at here. Yeah, right there. Okay, that's what we're looking at the airport. That's what Skydive is proposing, and I'll let them come up here and explain why they would like to do this. But our recommendation to City Council was the Grand Haven Airport Board recommends to Grand Haven City Council to approve the request by Skydive Grand Haven to construct an unsecured covered shelter, which is basically what that is, subject to Skydive Grand Haven accepting all conditions outlined in this document, and it's a 2-page document of our reasoning for it. The Grand Haven, and subject to conditions outlined in this document, the Grand Haven Airport Minimum Standards document, FAA requirements, and all codes, ordinance, permits, and requirements of the City of Grand Haven. On 4/26, during our regular board meeting, we all voted on it, and it was voted unanimously to move forward with it. And that's what we're doing here tonight, is just presenting it to City Council so they know what we're working on. Questions?
I have some, but Kevin?
No.
I guess my first question would be that they put it up at their own expense?
Oh, yes, this is totally their expense, and Tony Gwynn of Skydive Grand Haven is right here, and his daughter, Haley. And they can explain why they want to do this, which I'll let them do that, but it made sense to us.
Okay, come on up.
Really, and I explained a bunch of it in that presentation. That was actually something we put together for another meeting, but the gist of it is the King Air is our biggest investment we've ever made in our lives. This is something that we can't afford to let get messed up. We had 6 occasions of hail within 30 miles of here last year. If we wind up in a situation like that and I don't have anywhere, there's not a hangar on the field that'll hold that plane. I really need something to put it under when the weather comes. Other reasons too, it would be nice to have it for maintenance, we could do some maintenance on the plane during rain days when we're not jumping. I just don't have anywhere to put it inside right now to do anything with it when there's not good weather. It'd be nice for spectators and shade. We get a lot of elderly spectators that'll come out and there's not really anywhere to sit other than out in the sun. So it'd be nice for some of the spectators too. But I guess the only real hang up on the whole thing is, the airport board never really came to a conclusion either. Some of the board members thought that the board should require concrete or some kind of pavement under the hangar. That pretty much doubles the cost of the project. It's about a $45,000 building to buy it. Skydiver labor, we can put it all together ourselves. It's really easy to put up. And I guess the way I read the agreement, the city owns the building after 10 years. We get a 10-year lease on it, and then we rent it from you guys after that. And I'm okay with that at a $45,000 building. That means I'm paying $4,500 a year for it. To double it, and to make it $9,000 a year, it's really not worth that much to us to do. So I'm asking if you guys would, and as part of the minimum standards, it says that it requires pavement unless negotiated by the city. So what I'm hoping is the city will negotiate with us a deal to put this fabric hangar up. I would love pavement under it, don't get me wrong. I just don't have the funds to pay for it right now, and it would pretty much be a deal killer for us. But short of that, I really don't have anywhere else to park the plane, so that's kind of where we're at. And the presentation I sent you guys, if you got a chance to look at it, there's some good info about our customers and where they came from and how many people jump, but I won't keep everybody here talking about that.
You had a pretty full sky on Saturday.
Oh, yeah, we had a great day Saturday.
Okay. Thank you. Does anyone have any questions for him?
I don't have any questions for you. Thank you for your presentation. Just questions of our staff. Are there particular concerns or issues or anything that you want to raise that we need to be aware of?
Well, I would look to city council, because I've not gotten any direction from city council yet that we ought to be adding private buildings on airport property. And I don't know if it's something you're amenable to, if you would like us to evaluate that. The Skydive group went to the airport board and said, we'd like to put this out here. The airport board talked about it, and now they're presenting you with their thoughts on the matter and what they think would make sense to them. We don't have an agreement. I don't have an agreement. I've not proposed anything. Nothing's been proposed directly to staff, and you're getting it presented to you for the first time tonight, that this is being discussed. And is this something you would like staff to evaluate? Is it something that you would be favorably inclined to do? What I heard tonight is locking it up for at least 10 years. That would be direction I would need to get from you, and then we would do some research about what's been done at other airports, get some legal advice on what the minimum standards say and how this comports with our grant commitments from the federal government and the state of Michigan. So there's a good deal of evaluation and consideration and just looking at the business case of it. But I need to know from city council, is this something that you want to consider and pursue, or is it not something you want to consider and pursue? I'd like to get that direction from city council. Historically, we've not seen a lot of upside to tying up airport property for long periods of time when there's not a lot of revenue in it. There's some, but here you've got a very successful tenant out there who's been doing really well for his company, that's coming to you with, I think, a pretty reasonable request. So if you want us to follow up on it, we'll take this on right away and get working on it. But I hate to spend a lot of staff and attorney fees working on something to come back to city council and have there be a lack of support for it. So I would look to council to see if this is a recommendation you want us to pursue and that you're positive about. And I know you don't know much about it right now, other than it sounds like tying up the real estate for 10 years. I don't know if this is a year-to-year deal. And once you put it up, you want to keep it there for at least 10 years.
That would, if I'm going to leave it there and walk away from it and you guys own it, I would have to have 10 years with it. I wouldn't be able to do it for less than that, probably.
So that's a
we
consideration.
could put it up for 5 years, and if I have to move, I could take it with me. It's a portable building.
I have to tell you, I'm not that crazy at the idea of putting a private structure and committing to housing it for 10 years. That would not probably be something I would support. I don't know about the others. Aaron or Ryan?
I don't know enough about it, it's to house your your plane,
King
the
Air
planes.
airplane, right?
Where are they parked today? Are they
Out on the ramp.
out on the, yeah, right.
A big
So,
expense.
I think it's worth evaluating, so my view would be, it would be worth staff's time to take a look at it and look at, you know, particularly with the airport board's recommendation that we move forward with it.
Thank you.
Without, but to have it evaluated legally and otherwise, what we're going to.
Brian?
I got think about it some more.
I'm fine with it. I
Cool,
think
thank
it's great.
I'm willing to have staff take a look and see what it all is, the legality and how far to go. We haven't had much of anything else out there happening, so when you guys came along, it at least brought interest out there. People have been showing up, and I think it's a good thing to start out with, at least see where we are legally and what we can do and what you have to do, you know.
Sure,
right now, we don't know anything about it, so.
If you scroll to the last page of that proposal, there's a little map that'll show you where we want to put it. The real estate that we're talking about putting it on really is of no use to anybody else. I mean, we rent both of those hangars that are on either side of it. It would be right in between. There's not really anybody else that could use the space that would put a building there.
Okay.
I understand.
Sounds like there's three, say, at least look at it, Pat.
Got
Good
it.
enough?
We're on it, man.
Yeah,
Think we're
'cause
good?
Thank you, guys.
Pat does have this presentation and this two-page document of our vote and our reasoning
We're
for
gonna
it.
need to look at those, Ben,
Yeah,
thank you.
but he has that.
Appreciate it.
Okay.
If you guys have any questions for me, please let me know.
Okay.
Appreciate
Thank
you
very
coming
much.
out. Yep, thank you.
That's a pretty big expense for that twin turbo.
Okay, we're looking at the consent agenda. I think we need a motion to approve it as modified. Is that, or as written, as modified? Is that accurate?
Yes, ma'am.
So moved.
Is there support? Motion by Lowe, second by McLaughlin. Is there any discussion on the consent agenda? Are you going to read it for us, Ashley?
This is to approve the special and regular city council minutes of May 16th, 2022. To approve the bills memo in the amount of $1,057,722.91. To approve the appointment of Emily Green as interim finance director. To establish the Linear Park Sculpture Fund within the Grand Haven Area Community Foundation for the purpose of improvements to and maintenance of sculptures and art in the park. To establish the Musical Fountain Project Fund within the Grand Haven Area Community Foundation for the purpose of preserving, restoring, enhancing, promoting, and caring for the musical fountain in Grand Haven. To establish the Grand Haven Boardwalk 25th Anniversary Fund within the Grand Haven Area Community Foundation for the purpose of construction and beautification of the boardwalk. To establish the Grand Haven Waterfront Stadium Fund within the Grand Haven Area Community Foundation for the purpose of enhancing and maintaining the waterfront stadium, as well as enhancing and maintaining the surrounding public area located at the base of Washington Street on the Grand River Channel. To establish the Officer Scott Flahive Memorial Fund within the Grand Haven Area Community Foundation for the purpose of enhancing the parks programs named in Scott A. Flahive's memory. To approve the dedication of Robinson Street as an additional to the City of Grand Haven's Act 51 mapping system. To approve the decertification of 4th Street from Clinton Avenue to Franklin Avenue on the City of Grand Haven's Act 51 mapping system. To approve the decertification of Elliott Avenue from 1st Street to 2nd Street on the City of Grand Haven's Act 51 mapping system. To approve a 3-year license agreement with Michelle Hanks, owner of Courtyard Concerts, for the space at the Grand Trunk Depot with an annual fee of $7,800 in annual CPI increases. To accept the proposal from Avonmarsh of Benton Harbor, Michigan in the amount of $81,310 to provide preliminary and final and construction engineering services for Howard Avenue water main replacement project from 2nd to 4th Street, and to approve a contract with the Police Officers Labor Council from July 1st, 2022 through June 30th, 2025.
Any discussion? Please read the roll, call the roll.
Comments?
Yes.
McLaughlin?
Yes.
Fritz?
Yes.
Lowe?
Yes.
McNally?
Yes. Okay, moving on to new business. Will you read item A for us, Ashley?
It's a resolution to amend the 2022-2023 City of Grand Haven budget to include a placeholder for an additional $750,000 to provide resources to cover short-term costs associated with closing the city's defined benefit pension plans and to close non-union and union as appropriate defined benefit plans to be replaced with a defined contribution plan for all new hires.
So move.
Second?
Motion by McLaughlin, second by Cummins. Discussion?
This is obviously something that has been kicked down the road for a number of years, and this is gonna be, we do have to pay for this up front. We think it's important that we close the defined benefit program. It's been talked about for years. I think Bonnie's here, and she kind of filled me in on the history. So I think this is absolutely important that we take this first step. And I think she sent out a memo recently, or we got a memo about some of our employees are paying 50% of their salaries in benefits and so forth. So we have to give an opportunity to go to a defined benefit. So this is the first step, and I fully support it.
Brian, got anything?
Well, I just want to thank all of our staff and the ones who have been working on this, to our unions during collective bargaining. I know we're still negotiating with our Department of Public Works union. So this motion isn't necessarily binding on them. But I appreciate our staff's patience the last probably a couple of years now, as we've tried to tackle our unfunded liabilities. And as I've talked to different folks about it, I've kind of explained it's kind of a maybe not as in your face Harbor Island is, from a cost standpoint. I mean, we're talking 30 million plus in unfunded liabilities. Harbor Island's another multi-million-dollar problem, and I know there's been a lot of uncertainty with our staff, and that uncertainty is, that creates a lot of anxiety over what's going to happen next. That 17% that you're paying is I think painful too. For the city, we're now beyond that halfway point. The city as a whole is paying well above half the cost of it, and so it's hurting all over the place, and it has a real impact. So I hope this may not be the most ideal and everything everybody wants, but I hope that we're committing to the promises that we've made for the folks that have a defined benefit, and you want to continue to have that benefit. It's there until you retire, if you're here. It's going to cost you a little bit more. If you're not happy with the cost of that benefit, there's going to be an option for you to take the value of what you've put in, what we've put in, and convert it, and have still a defined contribution program that I still think will be very competitive and support you and offer some relief on how much you're putting in into a defined contribution versus a defined benefit, and having a little more flexibility with your investment options and what's tolerable for you. And then new staff will all be offered a defined contribution. The defined benefit won't be an option for them, but I hope that helps with recruitment, and that we're not telling new staff, hey, we're going to take 17% on top of everything else, and that cuts into your take-home paycheck pretty significantly, and I hope that will help retain some staff as we go forward too. So I guess more than anything, want to thank our staff. They're hardworking. This has not been an easy topic to have all of these types of discussions over. It's been challenging, and I know and frustrating, but I appreciate you bearing with us. I know it's not making everybody happy, but it's something that we have to solve and take. We're at the end point. We can't continue on anymore. It's going to, like Councilmember McLaughlin said, it's going to cost us a little more up front to deal with this, but long term, I think everybody's going to have a little more certainty. So, thank you.
Sure. I think that was really well said. What I wanted to say is that this is the first step. We're not out of the pension crisis yet, but I wanted to reassure our employees that we understand that we have a duty, first and foremost, to the already retired who currently receive a pension that they earned, and there's an unfunded liability out there. And then there is all of our current and active employees who have paid into a pension. And so we are very sensitive to all of that, and we understand, and our duty is to do everything we can to ensure, A, that you don't pay more than what you're currently paying in. But the fact of the matter is this is a very tricky financial process. If we look at 2010 to 2020, the number of retirees went up like this, the number of active employees went down like that, and our break-even point was 2015. That's when they were even. It's only going to continue, and so by closing, my own opinion is closing it to new employees isn't going to have as big of an impact as we think. It's still going to have an impact, but it's the ongoing increase in the number of retirements. We've got to deal with that. That's not on you. Just know that we're going to do what we can to preserve everything that we can, and that's why we're looking for money everywhere. We're scrubbing things, but I want to reassure you that we know that we have a duty to you all, and we're keeping that in mind. At the same time, I want to let you know that cities can go bankrupt, and that's why this is a real tricky thing that we're playing with. And we're not out of the woods financially. The first step, though, is to cut this off for new hires. And so I'm very thankful to all of you who have worked with us on this to get us to this point where we can close it, but understand that we do understand our duty to you all. Thank you.
Got anything, Mike?
We're amending the budget here. How's that going to affect our next budget? Is it part of the budget we had in there or not?
This resolution,
It's an amendment to it.
if approved, does set aside an additional $750,000 in case you need it next year. I don't think you will. We think we've budgeted appropriately to cover this first year, but just in case you didn't, you'll have that fallback, and it's coming out of fund balance. So you're not changing your taxes or doing anything right now. That's already done. That budget's in the can already. But this allows us to take the $750 out of the fund balance that's there and move it over, if needed, to cover any shortfalls. Because you're talking about turning off that faucet, right? Turning off the ongoing accrual of unfunded liabilities by closing this to new hires. So you're eliminating an uncertainty. But you haven't turned on any other faucets to create the resources that are going to be needed to cover that, because we know it's going to be higher than what it would have been had we not closed it, because there's no new payers coming on. They're paying 17%. So you take that out of the equation, that's got to be made up. And you all understand that. I won't beat that dead horse too much. But yeah, that's why we put that in here. I talked to our interim finance director, Emily Green. She thought we could probably swing it without that, but I thought better to have the peace of mind and not take an action of accepting a new expense without saying, well, we do have money for that. So you're doing both with this resolution.
All right. To allude to the 2015, isn't that the time when the BLP moved out of the MERS program with us? We allowed them to move on, and that's where we lost a large amount of people that was paying into it, because when they moved out, it made more of a drain on us. And I recognized that when I was on council. I was one that voted no on them to leave at the time, because our finance director made a recommendation for us not to let them leave until we had a plan intact. And what happened was, council voted 3-2, and it went on through, and you can see where the situation that we are today. It didn't help us none. It made it actually accelerate even much faster. So I understand where we're coming through this. I just want to make sure that we have sufficient funds to move forward with this, in which I know we're going to have a surplus this year. I already know that. If you look at it, so we're going to be doing good. It'll be covered.
Would the clerk please call the roll? Pat, you got something?
I'm sorry, Your Honor, before we call the roll, I did just want to make a quick comment that I'm very excited to be in a position where this current council, not looking back, but just looking forward, has directed that we come up with some solutions. It's a big problem, and we need to solve this. And I think the staff, there's a lot of eyeballs watching for leadership to create an environment that we can get beyond this, and I'm inspired, and I think staff is too. They're looking for that leadership to get us through this, because there is trepidation and anxiety, and I hear the city council saying we're going to take care of this year, next year, and begin down that path. And that's not making any comment on past councils. They've dealt with the information they have at that time. You're dealing with it this way, and this first action is what sets in motion the need for additional actions to turn that faucet on. We've got to identify a way to cover this, so we'll get to that in just a minute. So I just wanted to comment on that I've been anticipating this moment for a number of years, thinking sooner or later we're going to need to do this, and I think tonight is that night. So I appreciate your leadership and being a little bit bold to make something happen. It's a big deal.
Now would the clerk call the roll, please?
McLaughlin,
Yes.
Fritz,
Yes.
Lowe,
Yes.
Cummins,
Yes.
McNally.
Yes. Will you read the next one for us, Ashley?
This is a resolution to amend the 2022-2023 City of Grand Haven budget to increase fees for short-term rental units to $300 per unit to offset significant public expenses applied to appointing visitor areas with exciting, beautiful spaces, and for creating a structure to allow for expansive summertime programming in our beach town.
Okay, discussion?
So moved.
Oh, thank you.
Second?
Got a motion by McLaughlin, a second by Cummins. Discussion?
This is something that we have talked about for a month or so now, and as Pat has said, we've turned off the faucet. We still have to find additional revenue in this city. I think some of us took the time to review other municipalities. I think there's maybe some question from a legal standpoint on this, but I don't know why we'd stand any differently than any other community when it comes to short-term rental fees. So if our attorney for some reason has some questions about this, then maybe we have to amend this to say that we would adopt the resolution, given the fees full effect, if the attorney determines they are legal. I think we should move on with this. I think this is important in the community. It starts to set the stage for us to cover some of the shortfalls we have. So I'm fully supportive of it.
Karen?
Is the discussion, Your Honor?
Yep, discussion.
Right, I think this was one, as a budget, I know I've shared some research with Mr. McGinnis in looking at some of the short-term rental fees in surrounding areas, and that they were significantly higher. This is an existing fee that we charge, and we charge the same fee, $40 per rental, whether it's a long-term rental or a short-term rental. So this is really suggesting to break out the short-term rental and then increase the fee to be more competitive. There is a very real cost, and this is to account for the cost related to the enforcement one of the things that Mr. McGinnis shared with me was that just follow-up on the short-term rental payment of those registered short-term rentals. There was a large amount, even though it was only $40, it was hard to get people, some folks to pay. So there's a very real on the enforcement, also on the community impact and other, as well as other customary fees associated with short-term lodging. The community impact, there is a very real impact of short-term housing versus some of the long-term. It takes away from long-term rentals for some of our people to live and work here if it's only on a short-term basis. So with all of that, it seemed very reasonable given the fact that Charlevoix charges $300 to $600 per unit, Ann Arbor charges $500 per unit, Harbor Springs charges $400 per unit, South Haven charges $600 per unit unless it's your primary residence, and it's $125. East Bay $450 per unit, and New Buffalo had some really, really large numbers in there. So in looking just out there, it seemed to be reasonable. And that our $40 maybe wasn't sufficient and wasn't in line with some of the other area fees. So for that reason, this was brought up as another way of looking at some of our key fees and whether or not we were really getting back what it was costing us here in the city to administer some of those things.
Ryan?
My understanding is, well, I mean, it's clear that the request of the mayor, citing some personal examples related to short-term rentals, which I think creates a little bit of a direct financial conflict on this as far as being a part of the discussion or voting on it. But I think the questions were good. At this point, Ron, our city attorney, is still reviewing this matter, and he needs a little bit more time, and he's reviewing our reasoning for these fees and what other communities have used as their reasoning and justification for these fees and how they directly correlate. And so I don't have a problem waiting for a couple weeks to wait for that opinion to come back, so that way we're making the most informed decision. In case any language needs to be modified or tweaked according to our city attorney, to make sure that all the I's are dotted and T's are crossed properly. So.
Did you want to table this or wait until the next meeting then? Because I apologize, I should have brought this up during approval of the agenda tonight, and I missed that. The attorney did suggest that we take time to look at the basis that other communities have used and make sure that this isn't an issue. The mayor brought up some concerns, and I think the attorney would like some time to consider that before you guys finally vote on this.
I think that's right. I would also just ask that the attorney also look at fines associated with noncompliance or non-payment. What would be appropriate? I believe you said that the fees are due February 1st, and often people do not pay on time. And I also believe we had on record 320 or so, but there is a belief among some that that number is much higher, closer to 500. So short-term rentals. So I think putting in a fine might be appropriate, or at least like to have the city attorney look at the appropriateness of a fine for late payment or non-payment, but use as a short-term rental. Thanks.
Mike?
Yeah, I have a problem with it, because if this might be with the Bolt decision we had. Are you familiar with the Bolt decision? Because the way we have it worded now, it was kind of conflicting with it, because it gives us, they're supporting their businesses with tourist-oriented infrastructure, which the Bolt does. It goes on to say at the court decision, which says the fees which are not commensurate with services rendered are actually taxes. And the cities face restrictions on imposing new taxes without a rationale and quantifiable relation between the amount of the fee and the cost of rendering a service to a fee payer. The city is simply creating a new tax to improve the bottom line. So I really think we should hold off on this, because I think it might be falling the way the wording is. It might fall into the Bolt decision. So I think we should probably hold off until we get a legal opinion on this whole thing. I won't be supporting it tonight. I just want to make sure that we do it right.
Okay. Everybody else got anything else?
I just wanted to add, you're right. We do charge a fee today, just to be clear. So the question is, are we justifying it in the right way? Are we using the wrong language as we look at what those reasonable fees are? So we certainly need the attorney's opinion on that. And if we don't have a right to charge that for a long-term or short-term rental, that would also be very good to know, because we've been doing it. So it's not just the amount, it's certainly the whether or not we can and for what purposes. So
I'll make a motion to.
I'd like to discuss as well, if that's okay.
Okay.
I'd like to start by asking Ryan if he has, after he's made this backhanded reference to my conflict of interest, whether he has any legal basis for asserting that. Because I'm going to tell you that months ago, I fully disclosed my financial interest in summer rentals and asked for legal advice from the city attorney, and was given legal advice that I am not conflicted in any way, and then in fact I am obligated to participate and vote in these matters unless it is my individual property only that is being affected. I'm going to tell you that I'm not the first member of council who's had summer rentals, because Josh Bruger had them, and I'm going to tell you the previous city attorney, Scott Smith, gave him exactly the same advice, because Pat gave me a copy of the ethics opinion. So if you're going to cast an aspersion on my ethics, I want you to be accurate, and I want you to know what you're talking about, or don't bring it to this council.
I have a right to raise a potential or perceived conflict of interest. I raised the concern.
Without basis.
We, as a council, have not seen that particular legal opinion. I'd like to see it.
Did you ask for a legal opinion before you cast aspersions on my ethics? That's what I'm asking. And apparently the answer is no.
Yeah, well, that's not accurate. I'm not going to get into my attorney-client, some of the conversations I've had with our city attorney and asking and raising that concern. He hasn't responded yet on that to me to indicate that he's told you anything otherwise, for me to think anything otherwise. And now we're having a discussion about it tonight, and you've raised questions while citing your personal interest in short-term rentals, and so that's why I simply raised the question.
I'm going to say, just so everyone in the audience knows, that I am the person who raised questions about the legalities of the proposed summer rental fee. There's a difference in the law in Michigan between a fee and a tax. And a fee by a city has to be linked to cost that a city incurs. It's a user's fee. So if there's a business that has a special use, the city is entitled to charge for the costs incurred in that special use. But the link in this resolution was to make summer rentals pay for a greater proportion of city beautification efforts on the waterfront and in the parks. And it's not fair, it's not legal. When you get to the point, and this is the issue I raised with the city attorney, when you get to the point that you don't have a link between the city's costs and the fee charged, it's a tax. And this council has no legal authority, in my belief, to pass a tax of that nature. So,
Madam Mayor?
Yep.
I would just like to say that this was disclosed to City Council in an email from the mayor, where she did state to all of us that she had owned over the past 30 years, I read the whole thing, short-term rentals, but that her sister and her sister's partner were the owners of the resort, and went on to talk a little bit about some of her concerns. The reason why Mayor Pro Tem Cummins is raising it is that a conflict of interest is any interest competing with or adverse to our primary duty of loyalty to the public interest. A competing interest may be personal interest, it can be a duty or loyalty to a third party. There is sort of this, the reason why council members are having some questions is just, it was disclosed, this wasn't a previous, it was disclosed in an email to all of us this past week. So
I think
we are asking
everyone on this council knows that I own summer rentals. I believe that's probably accurate. I know I've told Ryan, I know I've told Karen, I know I've told Kevin, and I know Mike is a neighbor. So the ownership of summer rentals is a well-known issue here. In fact, Councilmember McLaughlin months ago said to me, "You're going to have to you're going to have to recuse yourself." And I said, "Well, we'll see." So I sent a memo to our city attorney, and our city attorney analyzed it under the law as I asked him, and came back and said, "You don't have a problem, and in fact you have an obligation to participate." And that's what I'm doing, and I'm letting you know that.
In a short-term rental discussion, so similarly, you know I live in Highland Park, but I stepped aside when we had an issue that came before council in discussing that particular issue relative to Highland Park and Notos. I stepped aside and allowed, and you all voted. In a similar manner, I would think that it's up to the rest of the council members to determine whether or not you indeed have a conflict of interest that could impact your, decision-making, just as it was done with me. I offer that.
I disagree, and I have no conflict under the city charter, and that is my position and the legal opinion by our city attorney.
Well, if we can, this is the problem when we have opinions that are maybe shared with individuals and not the entire council, and so this is something that we need a copy of this opinion and in what context the questions were asked. If there's anything in this particular matter that maybe changes that opinion, we'll seek that, I think, from our city attorney, and we'll sort this out. Me personally as a council member, if there's ever even a perception that I might be conflicted in a decision, I think it's my responsibility to simply bow out of the equation. I trust my fellow council members will always get the legal advice that they need and make a solid decision. If I'm not part of a particular decision, and perception can be a lot too. I'd like to make a motion to postpone this matter for 2 weeks until we can get our city attorney's opinion on the way we've structured this, and on whether or not
Before we move on, I just want to remind you, we have something come up tonight, and it has the same kind of persistence that goes along with it, so just reminding you of that. So I'm willing to move on and get to the attorney myself. That's what I said earlier.
You're seconding Ryan's motion, Mike?
Yes, to postpone it.
To postpone.
Okay.
Any further discussion on postponement? Would the clerk please call the roll?
Fritz,
Yes.
Lowe,
Yes.
Cummins,
yes.
McLaughlin,
Yes.
McNally.
Yes. Okay, moving on to new business item C. Could you read it for us, please, Ashley?
It's a resolution to direct staff to propose a formal plan and issue a request for proposals to implement waterfront user-paid parking in the spring of 2023, and to include optional plan for implementation of user-paid parking in all downtown parking lots.
Do I have a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Is there support?
Second.
Discussion?
I'll be voting no on this. We went down this route before, not too long ago, with our, we had usage of our parking lot, we're trying to make it a fundraiser type thing, and it turned into such a fiasco with all the people in town. And a lot of people don't have smartphones. If you get to use smartphones on it, it's not gonna work. And plus, paid parking downtown is, we had it at one time. We took it out. There was a reason why. It's not conducive to good business, for one thing. If you talk to the old businessmen that were down there, they were happy to see the meters go. As you look around someplace in some of the side streets, you'll still see the holes in the bars where they cut them off. I just don't think this is a really good idea for us right now at this time. You're just getting over, we're not really over it. We're still in a pandemic. We're still, everybody's trying to recoup from it. And we're gonna stifle our downtown. We have empty buildings as it is, and who knows how many more. Our businessmen are aging, and who's gonna take over? If you're gonna put parking down there, make it paid, you're gonna have less people coming. How does Saugatuck do it?
I don't think they've got paid parking.
That's what I'm saying, and they're
to be honest,
busy.
they don't have much parking either.
I know, but they park all over. They don't need parking. You ever hear them talk about parking like we talk about parking? We talk about parking all the time. You go to Saugatuck, you park and you walk there, you get around. It's a great, friendly community. Are we gonna turn into that community? It's not friendly anymore. I mean, charge everybody for coming here? It's not what we need to do. I like to see my town be more friendly. We're not very friendly right now. So I'll be voting no on it. I just don't think it's a very good, smart decision. I mean, when we had the paid for parking, how many times did we change the rules on that so we could fit local people there or whatever else that get free parking? It doesn't make sense. I don't like it at all.
Madam Mayor?
Go ahead, Karen.
Just to clarify, the consideration, it's a resolution to direct staff to propose a formal plan and issue a request for proposals. I think this is included in there implicitly, but one of the requests was for kind of a business case. So a request for proposal, but some kind of a business case to implement waterfront beach user paid parking, and it includes the optional plan for the downtown. The beachfront property, I just wanted to remind you, Councilor Fritz, that was your idea at the finance, review of the budget.
There's an implementation to make money, yes.
Yes,
But
which is what we need.
I only support it when it went down. If we had to do it, the place to start would be the waterfront.
Right.
Down toward the beach and that. But I didn't say I was fully 100% for it.
So the first step would be to get a formal plan in place. My only comment was to see if we could include in that waterfront beach user paid parking assessment, include the street parking on Lake Avenue across from the cemetery in that assessment, of how many parking spaces and what that would take. That's my only input to that.
Ryan, got anything?
A couple of agenda items ago, we're dealing with our pension issues that comes at a cost, and like everybody else, all of museums costs are going up. All of our costs are going up for everything, and our costs for our labor, our costs to maintain the amenities that we have, to maintain our waterfront, to have the great police services that we do when we have all the extra visitors and folks that come. We like them, but that comes at a cost. And so we have to pay for these items, and so we have some choices that we have to make. We can do special assessments on the businesses downtown, and I don't think that they want a special assessment for parking to take on all the extra costs for these things themselves. We can raise taxes. Not sure how many folks want to pay a ton in extra taxes. We can make cuts to our city services, and I'll tell you, our biggest parts of our budget are public safety and Department of Public Works areas, but I don't think a lot of folks want to cut those areas because they do a darn good job. They're good at what they do, and I think we need them. And so, well, what are our other revenue generating ideas? Should we charge some of the, because if you're a city resident, your taxes are already paying for the parking. Right now, it's all on you. There's no such thing as free parking. You're all paying for it. You're already paying for it. So should we charge the non-residents for some of the costs for these amenities and maintenance costs and public safety services that we have and we need and we want to continue? City residents, park free, you're already paying your portion. We can offer discounted passes to neighboring communities. There's validation options for businesses and downtown storefronts. The way that this resolution is drafted is to implement waterfront paid parking next spring, and to have staff present a formal plan in that regard to us and showing the revenue and expense estimates that folks want. And it simply include the option for what would the cost be, what would the option be to implement it downtown. I mean, there's so many different, with the technology that's in place now, it's not just cell phone based. Yes, there's kiosks that are an option too. Those come at a cost. But what is that? What are our capital costs? What are our operational costs every year? And then what kind of revenue do we expect that we can bring in? And then, where do we end up in the end and paying those things off over time and still generating hopefully some positive cash flow. So that's what we're simply directing staff to do tonight, is to go and do that work for our waterfront next spring and show us the options for downtown. We can set pricing from, free during the week or during any hours we want. We can charge just on weekends. We can charge 50 cents, $1, $5. We can change all of that because the technology is that flexible to where we can make it, different by zone. So I think this is definitely an idea worth vetting, and I'm very comfortable directing staff to continue pursuing this and presenting a formalized plan to us, inclusive of the things that folks have been looking for. So I will be supporting this.
Kevin, you got anything?
Nope, I'm good.
Clerk, please call the. I want to say one thing, which is I won't be supporting this either, and it's partly because of the character of our town, but the rest of it is because particularly putting the signage and the kiosks and the necessary infrastructure down along our riverfront will cause further disruption to the sight lines that I think are the prize of Grand Haven. So that's all I have to say. Go ahead.
Your Honor, I'm sorry. Generally, I'd prefer to make the presentation maybe at the start. And so I apologize for sitting back, but I know when I shouldn't speak. But there's been a great deal of discussion and involvement on this specific issue, but it's a little stale. So many people are wanting for some of the information and discussion that we had 2-3 years ago. So we need to do a better job of that. I've had some good interactions with some very
animated,
stridently opposed people, because just paid parking, it's like increased taxes, no, paid parking, no. And so we took that no in 2019 and we worked through all of those concerns that people had. Well, it's going to have this negative output and it's going to create this problem. And we looked at each one and said, well, how can we fix that? Because the general idea is that if 2 million people come here, and if each one of them paid 50 cents to come and enjoy our town, it would raise $1 million for us to help with the huge expenses we have. Well, how do we get to that? Because they're willing to pay that few dollars, and without creating negative impacts on our local businesses, because nobody wants that to happen. And there are ways to do that, and we went through in great detail, but it was 2019, so it's stale. So those people that went to those monthly meetings for many, many months and answered all those questions, we probably need to do some of that again and expose those same answers once again. The discussion about volunteers and employees who come in and stay all day having to pay, well, they don't have to pay. They just need to park in the free lot and walk a little further. Now, if they're disabled, we've got barrier-free parking available. So they can use that. If they're not disabled and they're going to be there for several hours, employees, there are free lots where they can park. And purportedly, we're already doing that. When we talk about this at the DDA, the merchants, the restaurant owners, they say, well, our employees park further away. Those spots are for our customers. So I guess I don't understand that concern, because I thought we were already parking more remotely. And when we look at our heat maps, which is where we started a lot of this discussion, where is the highest demand on parking? Where is it really congested? And it's where you'd expect it to be during the times you'd expect it to be there. And then these lots that are more remote, like up here towards the top of the hill here, very empty. So one way to spread that demand out is you charge in the lots where it's really popular, and you don't charge in the lots where people aren't parking. And then if they don't want to pay, they can park up here and walk down. If they're wanting the convenience, they can park right outside and they can pay a couple dollars. And we've talked about all this ad nauseum. So that's, we bring it forward after considerable discussion in 2019, considerable support for it, and to suggest that these problems are insurmountable. And I mean, it's coming. I believe you will eventually be charging for parking. It's just a matter of when. And I think when you start charging, you're going to wonder why you hadn't started it earlier, because it is successful and it is being paid for. It's being paid for by the taxpayers. I'm paying for it on the east side, as is every other property owner, are paying considerable amounts of money for this. And as we go forward, we're looking at adding more cost onto those people. This is one option that could create a revenue source that would not have any negative impact. None of the other communities that have started this up, there's no documented research that suggests that there is a significant impact on vacancies or on businesses making it or not making it, or people wanting to go there. So I think there's a very strong possibility that none of these fears will come to pass, and it will be a very successful and positive move. But we will put out the RFPs, we'll look at the business case, look at just the waterfront, and now I'm understanding waterfront means, we'll look at it and nothing is final until you vote on it, from the beach area all the way up the river, and you can decide later which ones you want to hit, as well as Lake Forest Cemetery. It fills up, and if we want to look at paid parking across the street there, and we can minimize the signage, we can put up rather small signage, and we'll keep that concern in mind as we do the evaluation, if this should pass.
Pat, I know a lot of these kind of FAQs, or you already kind of got it pen to paper. Mr. Hagan had raised a community up north that was, I think at the time, maybe they still are, considering paid parking. Had a really good, very excellent kind of, hey, if you have questions about like paid parking, all the questions that folks are asking you and asking me and asking all of us and talking about in the community was right there. Click on their website. So if it's, I know you guys are thin right now and there's a lot of transition going on, but perhaps something, an option that's.
I think it was Harbor Springs.
Harbor Springs, okay. Yeah.
And Pat and I talked about that already, because they had Jim forwarded that to us, and it was an excellent.
It was good.
Explanation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pat, one question. When the prior studies were done, were they just done on the downtown, or did they include the waterfront, beachfront, all the way down, like towards
We
Grand?
looked at all of them.
You looked at all of them?
Didn't look at the cemetery. That's a new one.
Yeah.
But we did
I
look
just
at
noticed that
Mulligan's
that's where all the
Hollow.
beach people park, and they walk, so if we're going to look, we may as well assess that area as well.
And that, it's good discussion to have, and maybe we will end up doing another committee to go through all these questions once again, and update it. But maybe that would be somewhere you'd say, well, there is free parking. If you want to walk further, you can park over there. And talking to Harbor Transit, the Beach Express could be much more effective than it has been. We've kind of let that slide a little bit. Maybe we get active on that again. And that's $1. You park out by 31 and you get on that, and back and forth is $1.
Who originally bought these parking lots? Who was the
city
original?
lots,
Who
I
was
think.
the original?
The city lots, Mike, or the?
Who was the original buyers of them?
We had special assessments and city funds.
And I think, if I remember right, I think the businesses pitched in to help pay for some of that property also, if I remember correctly, as I was growing up. The businesses themselves actually helped pay for it. Now just only special assessments, but I think they reached into their pocket and help us.
In the form of assessments. I don't know that there was ever.
Because I know the assessments were true, because the Eagles were assessed for the parking lot across the street from them, even though they had parking for themselves. But we were assessed for many years at the Eagles for that parking lot alone. But I think if you look back, you might be able to find that. I think some of the businesses
Parked there
actually.
and gone to the Eagles, so you're right.
Yeah.
Okay, anything further? Call the roll, please, Ashley.
Lowe?
Yes.
Cummins?
Yes.
McLaughlin?
Yes.
Fritz?
No.
McNally?
No. Okay, item D, Ashley, if you could.
This is a resolution to prepare a formal resolution for presentation to City Council to place a millage proposal on the November 2022 ballot to grant future City Council permission to levy up to 2 mills to offset the cost of providing public safety services to free resources to pay down unfunded accrued pension liabilities in the City of Grand Haven.
Can I get a motion? Nope. Karen? Mike? Okay, I guess we move on. Item E, if you would, Ashley.
An introductory resolution to repeal Section 9.5-38 and amend Sections 9.5-39 through 9.5-45 of the City of Grand Haven Code of Ordinances to allow and regulate certain adult-use marijuana establishments.
Okay. Is there a presentation, Pat? Or are we just going to look at the ordinance, the proposed ordinance? What's the plan?
Well, Your Honor, I'd be happy to do a brief introduction, and Tom Forshee is here, who is the author of the ordinance.
Go ahead.
I make a motion to put it on the floor, Your Honor.
Oh, yes. We've got a motion toward this resolution. Is there support?
Second?
Discussion. Pat?
Yes, the City Council back in, boy, I don't know if it was November or December, directed staff to begin work on both the zoning ordinance and a regulatory ordinance to permit sale of adult-use marijuana in Grand Haven, to just do the homework and do the research and then present legislation. So that's what's before you tonight. You had originally set a deadline of April, so I apologize, it is June 6th, but you're aware of the some of the challenges we've had and some of the additional legal work that we wanted to get done to really make sure we did a thorough job. Tom Forshee's been over both the land use, which is the next item on the agenda, and the regulatory language that's before you right now on the floor, that would allow us to begin reviewing and potentially issuing licenses to sell recreational adult use marijuana in the City of Grand Haven. So Tom can answer any questions you have tonight. We have had a number of discussions, mostly at the Planning Commission, and our one considerable concern for us was the idea of the current medical marijuana establishments that are out there, and are they automatically qualified applicants, or do they automatically get a spot in line, or do we have a lottery? And the discussion was that through your land use authority, you've already approved 4 locations. We know one went south and didn't end up coming through, but you've got 3 locations now, and those would, in essence, be held in place with an existing 2,500-foot buffer around them, so that they would be eligible to be the first applicants for these recreational permits, and then others would be, if they can fit in there, and if they can secure property, they could apply for a permit for an adult use recreational permit, in addition to the 3 that you've already granted, with the assumption that those 3 medical that are out there would likely want to apply for the recreational permits.
Can I ask a quick question, Pat? The 3 out there, I know one is Rebecca's, and I know one is Aaron's. There's a 3rd one that, as far as I can tell, there's been no progress on. Is it still a viable permit? Has anyone checked? Because our current ordinance says after 1 year, if it's not open, it lapses, the permit lapses. I wondered if there's been any, we've extended the one on Jackson, and the one, the new standard opened. How about the 3rd one? Do we know?
I know the 3rd one was making some progress. I'll have to check on the actual dates when they were approved and whether or not any sunset has happened to those, should this get introduced.
I don't know, but I'd be interested in knowing whether that permit has lapsed or not.
Okay, I can find that out.
Because we have, this is a very litigious area of the law, and if under our ordinance that permit lapsed, I'm actually already worried about the extension we gave to the one on Jackson because we didn't follow our own ordinance. And having read enough about this area of the law to know this is a litigious area, if we don't follow our own ordinance and someone is disadvantaged because of it, it will be grounds for a lawsuit. Okay. So Tom, I don't know how this works because I've never sat through an ordinance that's got that I have issues with, but I have questions about some of the provisions. Can I ask you about them? Sure. All right. Does anybody else have questions about any of the provisions?
I do, but go ahead.
Okay, so the first question I had is how we picked the zones, the areas. And Pat, you said you were going to try to put up the map, right? Is that something that we could look at? Because I'm very interested in where these things might go. And I look at the chart that's in the ordinance, and I found the zones that they're allowed in unusual, because it looks like we're going to allow them in both waterfront and waterfront 2. Is that accurate?
So the zoning ordinance tells where they can be located, just to, back up for a second. And the regulatory ordinance is the licensing portion. Zoning is where the buffer and the locations are.
So are we talking, which resolution are we talking about? Because E is...
It's the marijuana proposal, right?
No, there's two different, I think what's on the floor is the... Regulatory. So your discussion,
Okay, I guess I'm looking at it as a whole. Do you want to look at it separately?
Well, to just quickly answer the mayor's concern about waterfront 2, yes, they are considered as special uses on key street segments in those districts, but the current buffers completely exclude all of those areas. As you can see on the map, those red areas are areas that have been buffered out because of other uses in the general vicinity.
So if the buffers were successfully challenged, they could put this in the Tippefew building. Is that accurate?
Currently, under the current ordinance that's being proposed tonight, they would not be allowed on that property, but if somebody challenged the ordinance and it was found to be...
Well, the buffers are the place that we're most vulnerable to attack in this ordinance, I think. Do you agree with that, Tom?
I think when I was here before, I spoke about if you put a hard cap on the number of establishments, then you have to do a competitive process, and that competitive process has been the subject of litigation. In this case, we've avoided that by not doing a hard cap. Instead, we're doing what we kind of call the natural selection process, which is we're limiting it by buffering and zoning instead of doing a hard cap. So I believe if the buffers are reasonable, then that would be a reasonable zoning.
But who decides whether the buffers are reasonable?
Well, all ordinances, including the zoning ordinance, have to be reasonable, or they can be challenged as arbitrary and capricious. I haven't heard of a particular buffer that's been the subject of challenge based on distance alone. I think if there are good legislative reasons for 2,500, then that would be upheld.
Have you seen 2,500 used in other cities?
I'm trying to think if I've seen 2,500. I've seen 1,000, 800. I don't know. Again, it's a policy decision. I wouldn't necessarily put it up against any other place, but if there's a different number that the council feels is appropriate, then and they have a justification for that,
Right. I guess my concern is that past litigation has attacked in other places.
Mm-hmm.
It has attacked the cap, the numbers. It has attacked local ownership requirements. It has attacked Open Meetings Act issues. It has attacked cronyism among people making the decisions and the decision being made. And so we're steering clear of those hazards. But there are other potential areas for attack, and it seems to me in this ordinance, buffers might be the place they would go. And how do we justify, what is our rational basis for the distance of those buffers? It's been recommended by the Planning Commission, which I appreciate, but if it is successfully, doesn't even need to be successfully litigated, if they file suit against us, if the cannabis business files suit against us, we're going to be faced with a decision of paying to litigate a defense and justify the 2,500-foot buffers or the 1,000-foot buffers or the 500-foot buffers or whatever size. What I was interested in, and one of the reasons that I am very reluctant, as I have made clear to everybody on this bench and everybody in this town, to move forward with marijuana is it is an evolving area of the law, and the next place to attack will be the areas that we're vulnerable in our statute. That is my concern.
If I may, right now we are talking about the regulatory ordinance that does not include buffers, but I understand the two are very closely, interwoven. And the buffers that were looked at by the Planning Commission that were recommended are 1,000 feet from schools and libraries. So I think there could be a reasonableness argument made for that there's a lot of children often in those areas, and maybe we don't want to have marijuana sales happening within a certain radius of those uses. The next one is 500 feet from parks or parkland, places of worship, daycare facilities, or substance use disorder programs. So I was wondering, that strip along the beach and all along the riverfront where you were talking about, that's parkland. So it's 500 feet from there, you can't have the dispensaries. And again, I think the rationale there, and I'm not supporting or not supporting, I'm just trying to explain what I think the rationale was that there may be a lot of youth gathering in those areas, and maybe it's not something that would be compatible with that use. The 2,500 feet is from one another, and that's the pinkish areas that you see. We tried to outline the locations where the current medical permits are issued. So we've got the one up on Jackson, and you can see that pinkish 2,500-foot radius around that. And then we've got the one that is down the new standard, and again, there's a 2,500-foot radius drawn along that. And then further to the south is the one you were asking about, Your Honor, that's in the shopping center, and there's a 2,500-foot radius around there where they would be prohibited. So as you can see, the only areas left where any of these businesses could find a piece of available real estate would be either up by the campground at the north end of Beech Tree, or over in our industrial areas, either by the airport or over by Marion Beech Tree area there. It looks like there would be some availability, but otherwise.
Okay, Pat, so looking at that map, to the top right, the green is by the campground?
Yes.
And the middle right, kind of now at the bottom of your screen on the right, what area is that?
Well,
is that industrial park?
Yeah, that's out by the industrial park and the east end. I think that's Waverly running along.
Okay, and what do the pink and orange represent?
Well, that pink area, the orangey area just happens to be the underlying zoning there, so it makes it look different, but that's all in the pink excluded area. You could not do it there because of those existing medical provisioning centers that are already permitted in those areas, have a 2,500-foot radius around them.
All right, and the green at the lower right then is out by the airport?
Yes. Mm-hmm. And those are, all 5 land uses would be permittable, but then you would look to the underlying zoning and whether or not, a retail sales, for example, would be allowed in the industrial park, and I don't know that it would be. We'd have to look at each one of those. And I don't know that somebody would want to locate out there. There's not a lot of traffic.
Okay. I've got a couple specific questions, in, sorry, it's numbered in such a way that it's hard for me to, okay, 9541, I'm in L. This is about unannounced examinations of the facility. Are you with me? Not yet.
Not 9.5-41.
9.5-41.
Different version. So.
And I'm in L. Says acceptance by the permit holder of a facility permit constitutes consent for local law enforcement to conduct unannounced examinations of the facility and all articles of property in that facility. Okay, so I'm trying to figure out, it says during regular business hours, and I guess I'm going to ask whether there should be a comma after that, because otherwise, is the inspection allowed, it's consent to inspect without cause? Because the second clause in that sentence requires cause. You understand what I'm saying?
Yes, I'm just reviewing.
I believe this is the same language from that we had in the medical, and we actually modified that language because it was before way open, unannounced, for no reason at all, and I think a couple of us council members had concerns that folks were giving up some of their potential constitutional rights in owning a business, and so, you know, some language was added in to say that it had to be for suspicion or complaint of illegal activity or permit violations, that it had to have a little bit of reasoning on why you might do those things.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I'm going to say, I think you should be able to do both. I think that you should be able, if you put a comma in that sentence, during normal business hours, law enforcement can inspect without notice. And I think that's, for this type of business, that's not onerous. And then, after normal business hours, it says, whenever the facility is occupied, upon suspicion of complaint of illegal activity. So, I understand what you're saying, Ryan, and obviously, we could disagree on this, but I would say it is advisable for us to be able to have law enforcement inspect, just in the same way that they go into bars and check that there aren't minors drinking. So if they were normally operating, I would like this ordinance to say they're subject to random inspection by law enforcement during normal business hours. And after normal business hours, if there's a complaint of illegal activity. Obviously, we don't necessarily...
I understand it, that's good.
You okay with you?
I understand what you're saying, yes.
I'm not sure what the intent is. So if the intent is one or the other, if the intent is not both, then we could just take out regular business hours, and you could just say in that whenever the facility is occupied upon suspicion. But it looks like there was an intent there to give us an opportunity to randomly inspect during normal business hours, and if so, it needs a comma. That's what I believe.
Okay. Well, I look at that and see. I think part of the intent there was to have some reasoning and make sure now we're doing some kind of illegal search of a facility that's not doing any kind of illegal activity. So, but I'll revisit that and see if there's a way to,
I'm sorry,
to do that.
Tell me what you think the intent was?
I believe the intent was to have some reasoning such that entering the building wouldn't be seen as an illegal search of a premises with no reason to do so.
Right, but if they consent to search, it's not illegal. It's an inspection.
Yeah, and it is baked into the ordinance, so that's going to be our argument, is that they consented in order to get this. So that's where we're getting some latitude there. But we also want to be mindful that there may be an argument about illegal searches, so we wanted to make that clear as well.
Okay, I understand what you're saying, but.
We're trying, it's a risk, I guess, a risk management.
But if they consent to search, there's no argument for them. What you're saying is predicating a license on a consent to search may raise an issue.
Yes,
Okay,
and so
I
that's,
understand that.
yeah, so we're trying to,
So what was the intent of this clause?
I just told you what it was from 2 years ago.
I'm asking the drafter of the statute.
I believe he took what we had from a medical marijuana ordinance and made modifications for adult use. Is that incorrect, Mr. Forshee?
we did use that as a starting point, as a template, to draft, to kind of meld them together, because we're.
And do you remember
looking
any
at what-
specific change to this piece? If not, then I think clearly speaking to what the legislative intent was at the time, because I raised the issue.
Right.
And so.
Okay, but now we have 5 different legislators, or some different legislators.
Correct, but you seem to take issue with me telling you what was meant by it, and you're asking the drafter. I'm telling you, I was here when the original language was drafted. That's what I'm indicating.
I'm asking the lawyer for legal advice. That's what I'm asking right now.
Well, you're asking the question in a very interesting way, I'll tell you that.
Tom, will you
I don't
look at
believe
it?
we made any changes from what was there before, but I
And
can look at
what
that.
I'm saying, with significant expertise in search and in inspection, is our city would be better off if there was a comma in that sentence and it said, we have the right to inspect randomly if they
At any
they
time during
consent to it.
business hours.
That is my preference for this ordinance. It is not Ryan's, apparently. And I can't speak for everyone, but that's what I think would be the strongest position for the ordinance.
Yeah, one thing that helps me sometimes frame these up is the nature of the act that was put to the voters was a law to regulate marijuana like alcohol. So I tend to think of it like a party store that's open, and inspectors can go in there anytime and check to make sure they're not serving people who are under 21, or make sure that all of the liquor has proper stamps and labels on it, and in no instance would that be an illegal search. They're open for business. Anybody can walk in and take a look at these things, and chances are that's what our law enforcement would do if they were called. And thus far, I mean, the medical one was open, and I didn't get any reports where we were responding there to complaints. So I don't know that, I think this was probably put in there as somewhat of a risk management step that, we're concerned about this. It's new. We're unsure of it. We're uncertain. So let's make sure we bake in there that we can go check it out, because they're telling us they're going to be legal all the time. You're not going to challenge us and claim an illegal search if we show up to take a look to make sure you're doing things properly. And I don't think it was changed. I think this is the exact same language that's in the medical. I don't think Tom changed it. I think it's the same language we currently have. I can check that real quick while we're looking at this.
And what I'm saying is, in my view, it's bad language. So if nobody agrees with me, use the bad language you've got, but if anyone agrees with me, please change it.
Would the language be better if it had the comma?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Well, a comma would be easy.
That's all you gotta do is add a
yes.
comma.
But, yes. Okay. Next issue. Sorry. I got to figure out the numbering. It's on page 13, page 14 of the ordinance, and it's at the bottom of the page, the last paragraph, and it's number 4. Did you get it?
We're looking, I have a different copy, so.
I'm sorry.
Is it separate point of sale area and operations?
It's very difficult for me to figure out the numbering system, so, I'm sorry. It starts, an application or permit holder has a duty to notify the city manager. It's G4, issuance of commercial, medical, or adult use marijuana facilities permit.
What's the section number, 9.5?
It's the same section, sorry, Pat. 9.5 TAC 4.3, application for and renewal of facility permits.
Okay, gotcha.
Okay, and it's
Subsection,
G4.
yes, an applicant or permit holder has a duty to, okay.
So an applicant or permit holder has a duty to notify the city manager or their designated representative in writing of any pending criminal charge, comma. And then it says, in any criminal conviction or any violation of a local law related to the cultivation, processing, manufacture, storage, sale. So are they only required to, if they have a pending criminal charge, they have to notify of any kind of charge, or only charges of that nature? Understand what I'm asking?
I do understand, I was just looking at the language. As it's written, it looks like it's just for those related to marijuana.
So if they have a criminal charge, they have to notify us, regardless of what it is. And then if they have a criminal conviction, they have to notify us only if it relates to...
I see your question, yes.
That's my question.
Yes, that's correct.
Is that how you would read that? I find that odd. It would seem like if they have to notify us of any criminal charge of any nature, they ought also to have to notify us of any criminal conviction
Actually,
of any nature.
I think the intent was all for it all to be related to marijuana. And this may be the case of another comma. But I think it's saying in writing of any pending criminal charge and any criminal conviction or any violation, both of those go together related to the cultivation processing.
Okay. Can you fix that?
Sure.
Okay. Then in the same, actually it's H of the same section, so move down another paragraph or so. Okay, this one says, applications for new facility permits where no building is as yet in existence. Any applicant for a commercial, whatever, whose building is not yet in existence at the time of the city's special land use permit shall have 1 year immediately following the date of the city's special land use permit approval to obtain a building permit and commence construction. It used to say complete construction. Why did we change that to say commence construction?
Well, we were taking into account, after someone gets special land use rights, we wanted it to coincide with when special land use would expire. And someone, even if they don't, if they start construction and it's substantial and it's before their special land use expires, then they retain certain land use rights to continue their use until they abandon it. So I think we're saying as long as for licensing purposes, they would have to start construction and have some substantial construction, but not fully complete.
But it was a change, right, from the last version, because we dealt with a case where construction wasn't complete within a year, and we had to address whether to extend that or not. So someone chose to change it. I wondered why.
We talked about the fact that if no building existed yet, you had a shorter period of time than if the building already existed.
I looked at that, Pat, and if the building existed, you had a year as well, I think. That's why I'm asking about the place over by D&W.
Yeah, so it seemed like in the case of the one over on Jackson, for somebody to get the property, buy the property, get the approvals, get the environmental approvals, get the building financed and built, could likely take longer than a year. So we said, you need to commence construction within a year. Versus if the building already existed, it seems like you should be able to get in there and commence operating within that same year. So I think our intention in changing that was to give somebody that was building from the ground up a little more time.
But it leaves it totally open-ended. For instance, I think the premises on Jackson basically ceased construction and isn't going to complete construction unless and until this ordinance is passed. So we gave them an extension because they had a year to complete and they hadn't been able to do that in a year because of wetlands, but they've done no more construction, I think, going forward. So they've preserved their right to have a recreational marijuana operation because of Tom's view on the equivalent licenses. But they've really, they just basically used their extension as a placeholder.
I think that's true. I think they're holding until they find out whether or not adult use is going to be approved before they make an investment that they don't think they can support just doing medical.
Right, I get that part, but at the same time, that means they box out anybody in the lottery for anybody else in the lottery. I think there's an equity issue there.
Okay, understood.
Okay, so we're going to leave it open-ended, and that's what you recommend, Tom?
Yeah, I think that seems to be a fair reading. And
I get it. Pat, did you change it, or did Tom change it?
We discussed that extension of time because it seemed inequitable to have the same standard for somebody that's going into a building that already exists versus a building that didn't exist yet. And
when you say we, you and Tom or you and someone else?
Me, Tom, Jennifer, and Ron
were
discussing
right.
this.
So you guys, this is the way you think it should read?
Yes.
Okay.
By the changes that, and since we did that through this organization already, does that open us up for a lawsuit?
I'm sorry, can you say that one more time?
On the Jackson Street part now, because they got that as a placeholder, is this going to open us up if we do this way here, open us up to a lawsuit from somebody else because they're using it like for a placeholder?
I think if they have valid land use rights that are still ongoing and they have a valid permit, generally, especially in land use context, just because a business shutters, they can shutter for, there's case law that they can shutter for actually quite a long time. But if they don't abandon their use, which is they have to have an intent to abandon their use, a business can shutter itself because of economic conditions and not lose their special land use rights over time.
Because we authorized a medical marijuana, not recreational, and then they came to us and because they had wetlands and that, so we gave them an extra year, but
it wasn't really about wetlands. That's what.
Yeah, but one excuse after another. But the thing, but yeah, I just want to make sure that we're not going to be opening up to a lawsuit from somebody outside saying, "Hey,
I think
they overextended
the
it."
answer to that is that we've already made
the decision
down that road.
Yep, I know.
Okay.
And we did it based on the advice that we received at the time from our city attorney, who reviewed this and gave us options for how we should consider that.
Thank you, Ryan. Thank you, Ryan.
That's how it went. We didn't just just all of a sudden do something. We did it based on advice and research, and so.
And I would argue deception by the applicant.
Yes.
I have no. Well, let's not get into that. I guess.
Okay. All right.
Talking about throwing things out there without any evidence.
I'll talk to you about it after if you'd like. Okay. That's all I have. Mike, you got anything?
Yeah, I just had a thing I wrote up here. When it comes to this whole thing, is as I was growing up, my dad taught me that doing what is right had meaning to it. And also that nothing is free. Somebody has to pay for it some way or another. So if they give you something, it's not free. And as I ran for all my campaigns, I didn't take any money, knowing that someday that a favor would haunt me. I'd like to thank Councilmember Lowe for recognizing the conflict that she had interest with the NOTO's issues, not only being with the Highland Park Association, but also being a member of NOTO's and that. So I understand that completely. And so I'm glad that you did that for that. But with recognizing the conflict of interest there, I understand it, seeing both sides. Myself has been asked if I should not be voting on a lot of things. I brought up different occasions where I know somebody or related or whatever it was, and I let everybody know right away that I had special interest and that could be taunting on my vote, and I let everybody know up front. Just do the right thing is what you have to do. That's what you're elected to do, the right thing. So today we have a council member who accepted money from an individual who's an owner of a marijuana facility business, which would benefit from the change that we're having here. And after accepting and winning the election, such council member wanted it fast-tracked through, showing that votes can be bought. You know, my vote can't be bought. I did not ever accept any money from anybody to run my campaigns. I've run 5 times now, and I've never accepted my, there's no price on my conscience. I don't have to say that. I represent all, so I will not be sold. My heart and soul is in this town, and it will not be bought. I love this town, but I'm not going to have somebody buy my vote and have to do with it. That's the problem we have today with our whole political system, is that we have PAC groups, we have money being funneled in, and now it's funneled all the way down to city government. I mean, this is small government here, and we're letting them take control here. It's not good for us. It's not good for, if you look at some of the laws that we're running in Washington and in the state of Michigan and that, it's not, they're dictating the policies that we have to go by. It's not good. Shame on us for letting all of this happen. We need to get control of that. And I would hope that the council member would abstain from voting from this tonight, because he did accept money, and my conscience is not going to be bought.
Kevin?
Well, nobody buys my vote. I happened to meet the gentleman from New Standard into the campaign, and you know, he made a donation to my campaign, and for you to, you know, accuse me of such things is, you know, I put out a statement right when I put out a public statement on this some months ago, and I made it very clear that, you know, I'm going to continue to vote on this. My conscience is clear. You may not think so, but my conscience is clear, and I will support this to the end. I believe it's what should be done. It's what the voters wanted in this community, and I'm just going to see it through. So you and a bunch of other people can say what you want about me, but I'm just telling you that you know, a simple donation, a simple $500 donation, is a far cry from what you're trying to accuse me of. So I've already made my statement. I'm not going to, frankly, Mike, I'm not going to get into it with you.
Karen?
Madam Mayor, are we commenting on both resolutions at this time, or questions, or just the regulatory?
Legitimate question. I would say yes.
We're combining them a little bit.
We can't combine them.
No.
So comment on the one you've got in front of you.
Well, I'll
But they are related.
Right. Just to simplify things, I will comment. I appreciate the city attorney and Tom Forshee for helping to support us. What I'd like to say is elected officials are hired hands. You know, we're delegated the power from the public, and we're obliged to exercise that power as your trustees. To that end, I've done my best to listen to all who have contacted me from both sides of this issue. Many of you have sent several letters, emails, or spoken publicly multiple times in council session. I have thoughtfully and thoroughly reviewed and read through all of your statements and information. Some of you have sent me links to articles. I've gone out and looked at all of those articles and read those articles. Separately, I've also researched both sides of this issue just to leave no stone unturned and ensure I could objectively and independently make a decision. I sincerely appreciate everyone who's taken the time to contact City Council and share their views. Thank you for caring so deeply about our city and paying attention. Similar to other council members, I've also thoughtfully pored over the city attorney's legal opinions, and they have been available to answer all of our questions as it pertains to the ordinance. In March, I was also able to attend a legal briefing on this topic in Lansing separately, sponsored by the Michigan Municipal League, where I was able to meet with city officials from all over Michigan who are dealing with this issue. Regardless of the decision City Council may make on this matter tonight, roughly half of the people in this room will be disappointed. But as elected officials, we owe a duty of loyalty to all members of the public to decide a public question objectively and independently to the best of our ability. And that's what I have tried to do. That's all I have, Your Honor.
Right.
You have a couple questions on the zoning ordinance piece, but I'll save that for our next item. In general, on the marijuana topic, yes, we've received a lot of correspondence on this over the last 6-7 months. And a few things. The way I guess I've tried to evaluate this is, our community, when they voted on a statewide ballot initiative, made some decisions when they voted yes. And part of what they said when they voted yes to allowing recreational marijuana to be legalized in the state of Michigan was that their neighbors could grow marijuana in their homes. There's not one thing any of us can do about it. They already have that by voting yes, and that becoming law. Anybody in any of our neighborhoods can grow marijuana and use it. And so the way I've tried to look at this and say, well, if the folks in our community said yes to recreational marijuana and they were okay with marijuana being grown in their neighborhoods, would they not be okay with regulated retail sales in certain portions of our community? I've evaluated, should somebody who's at least 21 years of age or older have the right to purchase a legal product in their own community? I mean, it's kind of been said, well, they can go somewhere else and get it. Well, there's a lot of other products that we could go to other communities and get, but we also sell them here. So to simply say that we should push a business to a legal business to another community, I'm not sure that argument is as strong for me. I think the other big factor that's really weighed on this whole thing for me is that, you can see we've had a lot of discussion tonight about it. We've had attorneys looking at this for several months. Our planning commission, was looking at this, that if we approve recreational marijuana, where it should go. They spent time on it. There's been a lot of folks looking at this. There's risk to not doing this. Think about how much time it took for us to come up with something that if we're going to do it, makes sense for our community and has the proper buffers and are going into the right areas, that we as policymakers at least feel that that's the most appropriate, versus the risk on the other side is that folks go out and they get a ton of signatures and they place this on a ballot and it's wide open and it's anywhere that, you know, recreational facilities or anywhere retail shops could be in the city, for example. Well, that could open it up and put it in a lot of other areas in the city that maybe a lot of our community members, you know, may not be as supportive of. And yeah, they'd have a vote on it, but would they have had taken the time and do they have the knowledge to take a look at and understand the ramifications of that decision? So, and I think that's what folks hired us to do as policymakers. You may not necessarily agree with our, you know, how we look at things, but that's why there's five of us that have, you know, different perspectives and eyes on this. So the risk the other way, I think at this point, for me at least, outweighs us making, you know, good, solid policy decision with good legal advice and good staff advice on this to the extent that we can. So we have a mechanism. The framers of our charter had the foresight to say that we're not always going to get it right. And there is an opportunity that if folks do disagree with this decision, there are options. You can file a referendum petition and put this on a ballot and have folks vote for it that way. And I completely respect that that's what folks choose to do. That's the process that we have. But I think I got to make the best policy decision. Those are the factors that at least I've weighed as we've gone on. So thank you.
Since this issue was put on the agenda, I have been steadfast in opposition to introducing recreational marijuana sales to our city, and I'm going to restate my objections. I firmly believe the plan to introduce recreational marijuana sales has not been fairly vetted, does not reflect the will of the people, and will not serve the best interests of the community. Even though I've been chastised for saying so, I see this fundamentally as a community values choice. I oppose recreational marijuana sales in Grand Haven. I believe most citizens, if given an informed choice, would not support such sales. Local residents of legal age who want to purchase marijuana can do so simply and legally in nearby communities. Bringing rec sales into our town is unnecessary. It will enrich a few, who are mostly sitting in this room tonight, at the expense of potentially the character of our town. I have serious concerns about how increasing recreational marijuana availability could complicate the large influx of summer visitors who already challenge our coping skills. And over the years, I've seen marijuana's ruinous effect on a number of local families when its abuse has derailed their kids. 80% of Michigan communities continue to prohibit recreational marijuana sales. The legal landscape that surrounds sales permitting is changing rapidly still due to lawsuits by marijuana sellers competing for permits with great long-term financial value. Standards used in early permitting processes, such as local ownership requirements or a cap on the number of stores in a community, have been successfully challenged in court. Many communities have found themselves defendants in such lawsuits without a war chest to fight the highly motivated, deep-pocketed cannabis industry. The safest way to avoid costly litigation is to continue to prohibit rec sales. We honestly don't know how desirable Grand Haven will be as a cannabis business location. Our city attorney has advised if we move forward, it would be prudent not to cap the number of sales operations or require any degree of local ownership to avoid lawsuits. Grand Haven is located on a slow stretch of one of West Michigan's principal north-south highways. We are graced by more than 2 million visitors each year, and our economy depends on $80 million that our largely family-friendly visitors bring with them. A few well-situated billboards on US 31 could make us a hotspot. If even a small percentage of our visitors come because marijuana is readily available, it could dramatically change our town. We are a small community with a lean city staff, a fully extended Department of Public Safety, and significant financial challenges. We don't have a war chest to fight the cannabis industry, and our safest course is to continue to prohibit recreational sales. At its February 8th meeting, the Planning Commission unanimously passed a resolution that asked for three things: clarification from council about its tasking, a survey on recreational marijuana sales to obtain community input, and a brief on legal issues surrounding the marijuana sales permits. At the following council meeting, council verbally clarified its guidance to indicate Planning Commission should not consider whether to implement recreational sales. It was only allowed to consider where to put them. So basically, the three people who will vote for this tonight, sitting on our bench, are the people who have decided this issue. No survey of the community was done to ascertain its view, and after suppressing the initial legal briefing I scheduled early on in this process, neither Councilmember McLaughlin nor Lowe attended the rescheduled briefing. I know the Planning Commission file on this issue, Pat, contained significant correspondence from local citizens, but I don't think any of us have seen that, and I don't know where it went. I'd be interested in knowing whether those materials are available. I've seen some of those letters, but not all of them, and I don't think that they've been provided to council before council makes its decision. If you're looking for community input, the letters in the Planning Commission file, particularly if Planning Commission wasn't allowed to recommend whether to implement rec sales, should have been included. That's all I've got. Will the clerk please call the roll?
McLaughlin,
Yes.
Fritz,
No.
Lowe,
Yes.
Cummins,
Yes.
McNally.
No.
And what did we just vote on? Was that the regulatory or both? I'm just asking.
Fair question.
Just the regulatory.
Just the regulatory. So we need a roll call, Your Honor?
I think we need a
On the
motion
second?
first. We're on item E. Nope.
No, we just voted on item E then.
We're on item F. Ashley, would you read it for us?
Item F is an introductory resolution to amend sections of the Grand Haven zoning ordinance to regulate medical and adult use marijuana facilities.
Okay, first I'd like to commend Ashley for the way she reads the items on the agenda. Thank you very much. It's a lot easier. Then I wonder if there's a motion to this effect.
So moved.
Is there support?
Support?
So motion by Cummins, second by Lowe. Is there any discussion?
Yeah, I had just a couple things on the zoning ordinance, question-wise. The part that talks about the minimum buffer separation, so it's in section 40-543A. So, it says, except equivalent licenses located on the same parcel, there shall be a minimum separation distance of 2,500 feet from any other medical marijuana facilities and adult marijuana establishment. And my question was with that language, with it saying, medical marijuana facilities and adult use marijuana establishment, it made it almost sound like the buffer applies if you have both, but not, one or the other, which I think our intent is one or the other or both. Is that?
One or the other or both.
Okay,
Yeah.
so-
But if you said or, it would be
One or the other.
The other.
So was it just I'm not a lawyer, is it simply having the word?
And is good.
So and is good, it doesn't have to say and or?
Usually doing an and/or is not preferred in
Okay.
statutory drafting, but I totally get your, I
Okay.
get your point on that.
You're the
Yep.
attorney.
Yep. All right.
You're trained as an attorney, I trust both of your, okay, so we're good there. we have with medical marijuana in our fee schedule, we have an application fee and a renewal fee. The question for Pat is that, I mean, obviously we're moving along with this tonight. I think we're going to need something added to the fee schedule to more fully encompass marijuana, so it's not just related to medical. If somebody wants to apply for a recreational retail, if they want to submit a retail application, I'm not sure. And then there's a renewal every year as well. And I did ask Pat to make sure that, I think we have one that's currently operating, to make sure that they're compliant and have submitted their renewals yearly as well. Third item I had on the zoning, so the chart, Mr. Forshee, that's in 40-40201. So that chart.
Oh, there was another issue there, Ryan, I saw it too.
Yeah, so the chart for provisioning center, I don't know if we noticed the same thing or not. For provisioning center,
Centertown?
we used to have provisioning centers allowed as a special land use in the commercial business district along US 31. In fact, one of the businesses that are here actually is operating there. For some reason, I know there was specific discussion at the Planning Commission level to drop out of the central business district. I'm not sure why the special land use kind of S dropped out of the commercial. You know, we're allowing it for adult use retailer, but provisioning center I would think would still need to be in there. So is that something that's
I was talking with Pat about this. I think it was either clipped because of the way the box, or it was an inadvertent deletion. But that's something that can be handled administratively as far as correcting it. It's just a scrivener's error, and it wasn't part of the discussion of the
between the first reading and second reading.
Between the first and second reading, okay. Yeah, we can just take care of that.
Then I noticed, this is just more of a general administrative matter, I haven't noticed this before when I talked with our official zoning map, lists all of our zoning districts. The legend has the central business district and commercial business district labeled both as like CB, which would create confusion, right? Because they have separate. Now the map itself is correct and shows the correct letter designations, but just the legend needed to be corrected, and so that's something Pat, I think on our end, needs to update that legend to make sure that that's correct. But
The legend on the zoning map itself?
on our city's official zoning map, the legend for both central business and commercial says CB.
They have the same abbreviation,
Right.
I see.
but they're two different zones.
I think that's not unrelated to marijuana, but
Right.
that's just a non-substantive, so that could be
That's all
done.
I had on the
Yep.
zoning,
Good catch.
zoning pieces.
Anybody got anything else? I did have just a larger question, Tom. What's the process going forward? So I hear there's no public hearing required?
So no, not at this point. So they're both coming together for the first reading, and then it'll return again for the second reading. Obviously, the Planning Commission one took a different route. It has to go through Planning Commission first per the Zoning Enabling Act. But now they're meeting together here for the first reading, both, and then.
So, but there's no, on this issue, on this ordinance, there's no public hearing required?
No, unless you want to, but no, there's not one required. It would be just like any other ordinance.
Okay.
Yep.
So there's a first reading, then there's a period of time.
Yep.
And there's a second reading.
Correct.
Then there's a period of time, and it automatically goes into.
And then effective, yeah, after publishing 21 days, yeah.
Okay. Anybody got anything further? Would you please call the roll, Ashley?
Fritz,
Seeing that they already passed everything, I have to agree with this. Not that I want to. I'm just going to add a little bit to this, is that I was one of the proposals that did the medical marijuana. Mr. Bruger and myself were the ones that did it. And I was not for recreation. I really don't want to do anything with this either. But seeing that they already passed it, already moving through, so I'm just going to have to go with the flow, even though my vote wasn't bought. I'll say yes.
Lowe,
Yes.
That's right.
Cummins,
Yes.
McLaughlin,
Yes.
McNally.
No. All right. Looks like we're on G. Would you read it for us, Ashley?
This is an introductory resolution to amend the City of Grand Haven Code of Ordinances by revising Chapter 19, Article 2 regarding historic conservation districts.
Okay, is there a motion to this effect?
So moved.
And is there support?
Second.
Motion by Cummins, second by McLaughlin. Discussion? Karen?
Madam Mayor, I see we have our chair, Eric Bai, and commission member Lisa Dora in the audience. First of all, I just want to thank the commission and the city staff for working diligently on the historic district ordinance amendments to clarify what were gaps and some confusion. Just as background, there's really two types of historic districts. There's a national register or state historic district, and there's a local historic district. The Historic District Commission gets its power and authority through Michigan Act 169 of 1970, which is the Local Historic District Act. And the local historic districts are intended through the state statute, intended to provide legal protection through the ordinance. However, many, many, many years ago, when Grand Haven created its 7 historic districts, probably more than 30 years ago, so it way predated even Pat coming here, it removed this protection and any restrictions. Some of you have come to me and asked, why do we have things happening to some of our historic buildings? And the fact is, the protection isn't like all other municipalities as it relates to a historic district. We have something like 1,200 properties in 7 historic districts, but only 12 are protected, and they're guarded by our Historic District Commission. But there are many other responsibilities of the District Commission in terms of education around historical preservation and other things that very, very important. But the actual legal protection is limited to 12 properties. Now, about 18 months ago, the commission discovered that we weren't following our own historic district ordinance that well, and that's why this particular amendment kind of, and we had some gaps. And so part of the question was, do we just write an ordinance of what we do, or do we try to stay true to the last semblance of what we have from the state statute, and that is the protection of these 12 local landmarks. So what the commission city staff has brought forward I think is good. I wish I would have had an opportunity to provide you some feedback because there's some confusion. So I have a few questions on the specific ordinance that I'd like to review with you all before we get direction from council. First of all, I think if I understand it correctly, what you're trying to do is make it very explicit that the commission's review is advisory only for the vast majority of the 1,200 properties, and that the exception being local landmarks, of which there's only 12, where you would like to limit the commission's authority to major construction projects only, which seems reasonable. The question I have on that is, does that include demolition? Right now,
Demolition be a major construction project?
it's separate in the actual state statute and in our prior language from the ordinance. But I would think that since the local landmarks are the one area that the commission has, you know, power and authority over, that it would include demolition, not just major. So I didn't know if it was presumed or assumed into that, or if we needed to write that in specifically.
included if you go, scroll back up to the definition, under A.
Oh, under the first
From
part?
demolitions to a principal building.
Oh, okay, sorry. Okay, so it's amended in there. Okay, great.
Yeah.
Great. So then, good, thank you. I didn't see that there, but I like the definition. So the second part, and the only other thing I'd mention is where we have section 1, section 2, section 3, those are all, they don't pertain to the actual section in the ordinance. Section in the ordinance is 19-12, part 14, and so just be careful when you go to,
Yeah, when we
put it in.
codify it, we lose those
Yeah,
sections
yeah,
of the
those,
ordinance,
those big sections. So under your section 2 here, I found the language a little confusing where you say except for major construction projects, because the statement here is the commission's review of permit requests for additions, alterations, and any other type proposed with regard to a landmark which requires a permit except for, did you mean to strike that?
No, Karen, it took me a while to work through that too, but I think the next page has, I read that and went, that can't be what they mean, and then I read the next page and went, oh. Then
It's
for
it's
major
different.
For major construction projects, there's a different and more,
I agree.
more critical review.
I agree, because it's referred to in the state statute as a certificate of appropriateness, and so
Something like-
understand what that's a different application and review. The question is, it's confusing because we state under this power to designate generally, I don't know, there's something in the wording there that I would just ask that you look at, because it almost looks like you want, with regard to a landmark, that's the only one you're trying to limit the commission's review, but you're saying the commission's going to review those permits, but only for a landmark and only for major construction projects, but you say except major so I think there's something, I think it's the opposite of what you're trying to do on page 2 is what I'm.
So correct me if I'm wrong, but I think what we're trying to say, except for major construction projects for which an additional permit is required under subsection B below. So that might eliminate that confusion, so the reader would get it right here.
Yeah, or you want to say in that commission's review is advisory except for, because you say that later on, but it sounds like it is a part of that mandatory review. So it's a little bit confusing. The other piece on that, I guess I just have other questions on that. I wondered if the clarification, such measures on that same second sentence or third sentence under 1A, power to designate, such measures shall include, and when you start that, if it might read better if we had 1, mandatory commission review of major projects for any landmark property prior to a permit being issued. 2, at the city manager or city council's request, the commission will provide a non-binding advisory review with regard to preservation for permits on any structure within the 7 historic districts. And then, no issues on the moving of the landmark, but upon any commission member's explicit request, he or she shall be given a copy of any permit application pertaining to properties within the historic district. You say that later in so many words, but it just means they can review, a commission member could review the details behind it. You say later that, it's only upon a decision made by the commission if they want to take action on it. So I'm okay with all that stuff. I just thought that if an individual commission member who's been appointed has a concern and would like to review the details, we talk about having the list, and the list is good, but the list just tells me which property has the application. The actual detailed application might be of interest to one of the commission members. Let's see. And then I guess on the advisory capacity, part part of their mission, I wondered if some of that wording might be here, help here. It may contact if the commission decides during a regular or special meeting that a permit application merits comment by the commission, it may contact the applicant or owner of the property to offer information and assistance on historic preservation. That's a part of their mission, so I was just offering that as potentially. The commission shall not take further action, and I would add, on any non-landmark properties unless directed to do so by City Council. Again, language, just clarification on what they may act on, what they should not be acting on, or what they should be doing in an advisory capacity, and what they must from a mandatory and state statute act on. So those are just a couple of suggestions. I can send you some of the details behind that, but just to firm up and make clear, the language. But I wanted to commend the commission and city staff for trying to find a middle ground here and something that was reasonable and yet still had some semblance of the state statute within there.
So Karen,
So my comments are on?
yes, but how do you recommend we proceed, would be my question.
Do we want to go back to the historic commission with this discussion? They spent considerable, I think, several meetings wordsmithing this.
I would be happy to,
Well, there's
do
either
that.
we vote on this resolution or we vote to postpone this resolution. Those are, I think, our options. So, do you want to make a motion to postpone this resolution?
I would like to make a motion to postpone until the next meeting and to offer me a chance to talk about some of these changes with both the city attorney and the commission, and then we revisit next meeting. That's my motion.
Is there support?
I'll support it.
Okay. Can you, clerk, please call the roll?
Lowe,
Yes.
Cummins,
Yes.
McLaughlin,
Yes.
Fritz,
No.
McNally.
No. Motion carries, and then we have to do,
Just for clarification, was that to postpone until the next meeting or until after the next historic commission meeting so we can get your thoughts and go back to the historic commission and?
This is a vote on the amendment.
Oh, I'm sorry, that was just the amendment.
No, we're just.
Well, okay, no, we postponed
Oh,
it.
we postponed. No,
voted to
that's just for-
postpone, right, not to amend.
Hopefully it's till a
Right.
date definite or indefinitely, I guess.
Right, but it won't be possible until after the Historic Commission has
Their next
met.
meeting, which is, do we know when their next meeting is? Next Thursday? Okay, so that would be prior to our meeting on the 20th, so that would still work, yeah?
Be pretty tight to get it on the agenda if the meeting's on Thursday and it closes
yeah.
at 5 o'clock. I'd get a meet at 4 and then I'd have. Yeah.
That's what I'm saying.
It would be the
Right, right,
Thursday
right.
that we have to
Won't
put
be
that
able to
agenda
make
to
it.
bed, so it'd be July 5th when this comes back to you.
There you go.
We'll get it teed up.
Yeah, okay.
Okay,
It's history, it's not going anywhere.
I think they voted to postpone till, yep.
Put it in the bucket. More to do.
Okay, Ashley, moving on. We are at 13H. And I'm going to take, actually, I pulled this one off the consent agenda with due respect to Ashley and letting you know I'm a great fan, but I thought that this was an issue that's worth discussing in a larger a larger perspective. So I guess the first question is there a motion to approve the appointment of Ashley Lash as interim city manager?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. And is there any discussion by anybody but me? Have you guys got, I know Karen, I think you put this on the agenda with Kevin?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Sure.
And can you, do you want to explain why, or
No,
is it self-explanatory and?
I will, as we engage in a formal search to assist in finding Mr. McGinnis's permanent replacement as city manager, I believe that we can find no better person to fill the role of interim city manager than Ashley Lash. I believe Ashley's educational background and her work experience make her uniquely qualified to act as our interim city manager. Specifically, her undergraduate and graduate degrees in public administration have provided her a strong foundation to manage our city operations and support city council. Her years of experience in the city manager's office include both broad and deep exposure to some of the challenges Grand Haven faces and the overall operations of our city. In fact, as assistant city manager, this really is her job to step up in the absence, and there's no other internal or external candidate who I believe is more familiar with the day-to-day issues of running our city and supporting city council than Ashley Lash. Ashley also understands the culture and work environment of here at City Hall, and I believe she has strong support from our city staff in this interim role. As a result, I believe her appointment as interim city manager will help allay fears, maintain stability, and facilitate a smooth transition. With just 14 business days before Mr. McGinnis's departure, I don't think council should be second-guessing the person he hired, recruited, and has had as his right hand for the past 4 years. I don't think we should second-guess that decision. I think we've got enough other very important things that we need to move on and work on. Thank you.
Anybody else? Mike?
Just want to say, 4 years that I've known her, she's done established and a very good job of what she's done, and she's well liked by the community. And just to go along with all you've said about her, and also being under the direction of Mr. McGinnis is Sam Jansen, which is in North Muskegon, which is a city manager, which came from here. Of course, we have any questions? Vester Davis moved on. He's onto a city manager position, and I think, Pat, you've done a very good job of training people, and 4 years, I think, is about time that, if we need to, take a look at her and give her the interim, and I think it's well-deserved.
Right?
Yeah, I think Ashley will serve us very well during this transition as our interim city manager. I have full confidence in her. Heck, she's even tonight serving as our clerk, and she's worn, she's put on, similar to Pat, a lot of hats at a lot of different times, and always steps up and works super hard. And I appreciate your work and your commitment to the city. And I'm happy to vote to support you as the interim city manager. On that note, you need to be compensated properly while you're interim, and so the mayor and maybe Pat can work on, or mayor, have some conversation with Ashley to work on what that should look like, and bring something back to us at our next meeting so she knows what her compensation is going to be while she's serving as interim. And then as a council, I think we need to have some discussion, maybe not during this item, but about what our search looks like, what our timeline looks like. We have firms that have bids due by Wednesday, and we want to start setting up a timeline to work through that as well. So, but I'm happy to support Ashley this evening.
Okay. I'm going to tell you, though I am a huge fan, I am very concerned about the other staff shortages. I mean, okay, right now Ashley's, I don't want you to be the last woman standing, but Ashley is both serving as assistant city manager and city clerk, and once Pat's gone, we're going to have to figure out how we move forward with meetings. And I think that there are many functions in the day-to-day operations of the city where you have been doubled up with somebody, and that person's gone, all right? And I am quite worried about the pressure we'll put on her and the ability we're going to have to move forward. But it sounds like I'm in the minority in that regard, so
I want Ashley to hopefully hear from all of us that she needs to let us know what she needs during this transition to get the support that she needs to do the job. And, you know, like I said, similar to Pat, she's worn a lot of hats. He wears all kinds of hats, and she's going to need some support. And it's okay to bring to us what you need on an interim basis to support you, and that way you can get the job done and address some of those concerns. Yeah.
Will you call the roll?
McLaughlin,
Yes.
Fritz,
Yes.
Lowe,
Yes.
Cummins,
Yes.
McNally.
Yes. Congratulations and condolences, that's all I can
Guess I could offer to call the roll. That might have been kind of awkward calling the roll on your own appointment. I didn't. Did very well and with great
She
clarity.
did a great job. She's learned all the names. Okay. I went backwards, sorry.
Unfinished business.
Unfinished business, yes.
Yeah, you want to read
Okay.
this one?
I just reviewed, and it was in, okay, unfinished business. Ashley, will you please read the item?
I'm going to read this while she's getting the people from CL Lakewood up on the Zoom screen. They've been waiting patiently. Consideration by City Council of a resolution to approve a buy-sell agreement with CL Lakewood to transfer ownership of the diesel plant property at a sale price of $1 million for the redevelopment of the property as a restaurant and event center.
So move.
Second.
Move. We might have to write this down, Pat, because Ashley's otherwise occupied. Motion by Fritz?
No,
No,
McLaughlin,
motion by
second by
McLaughlin,
me.
second by Fritz,
There
sorry.
you go.
My sound, your video.
Oh, look at me.
Hey, hi, Pat.
Hey there.
Hi, Ashley.
Now, I don't know if you guys want to turn your cameras on and,
I have my sound on, Pat.
okay, if you guys want to turn your cameras down on. There we go. There's Kyle. And Nathan may have stepped away. It's been a long night for these guys. Can you hear us there, Kyle?
Yeah, much better now.
There you go.
Yeah, we got you. We can hear you just fine.
Oh, there we are. Yes.
Okay.
I was also listening in and trying to resist putting my camera on since I've been at a work site for the last few hours.
Okay, well, we've read the resolution to approve the buy-sell agreement. This is the second reading, and there was support for that, so it is on the floor for discussion at this point.
Has anybody got questions? If we've got CL Lakewood here in front of us?
I got it. No.
I had one question based on something the Historic District Commission, I always say it wrong, the Historic Conservation District Commission put in their minutes, which was they were concerned that the buy-sell only requires you to keep the west and south-facing facades of the building, and wanted to support the idea of preserving the rest of the exterior of the building if possible. Can you guys explain whether that's possible, and if not, why not?
Sure. Madam Mayor, council members, we're really glad to be here at this juncture and looking forward to working with the city and its interest, and confident that what we do on this property will be of great respect to the building and to the community around it. I think that it's the addition of the two elevations was just to make sure that if, uses change dramatically down the road, substantially down the road, there would be the most significant elevations of the building preserved. However, our intention is to keep the building looking, restore the building like it is, to respect its architectural integrity, to do as much as possible in that regard. And the same thing for the other elevations. I think a little bit of the hesitancy to add all four elevations is just to allow some flexibility for some wildly unknown eventualities down the road, but also because we come from a historic tax credit perspective, even though we're not necessarily pursuing historic tax credits for this building, federal historic tax credits or state historic tax credits. But from that perspective, any modification to a facade is generally not allowed. Any main facade visible from a street generally can't have substantial modifications. So we come from that perspective, which is if you say you're preserving a facade, you can't make any alterations. And we'd like the building to be able to be altered so that it can function better. For example, putting in a handicap ramp on the side of the building instead of or in the front of the building instead of the side of the building, putting a rooftop outdoor space on the the west elevation, would not be possible under historic tax credits or with that kind of restriction of preservation, but certainly would be allowed, and still you can do that and still preserve the integrity of the building. So our view is we want to, have as light a touch as possible on the architecture to preserve as much as possible, but to have some flexibility in the design to add elements that enhance the building. I think that the Historic Commission should, feel comfortable that with us at the helm, we will largely preserve both all four elevations of the building. But in terms of the purchase agreement, we think it's wise just to include the two most prominent visible ones that have less mechanical intrusions to them, like the other elevations do.
That sounds reasonable to me, and I appreciate the explanation. Thank you.
Sure.
Anybody got anything else?
Just one comment. Oddly enough, that building does not fall within any of our 7 historic districts. Oddly enough, but...
Is it a landmark?
Odd but true. It is not.
It's not a landmark, and it's not in a historic
But it
district.
is a beautiful historic building.
Okay. Anything else? Ashley? Pat?
I mean, I should shut my mouth and Nathan's going to kill me. Is it your intention then to pursue federal tax credits, and would this be a building you'd be interested in listing as an historic recognized building on either state or federal registries?
I think the answer to that is we'd be interested if it met time constraints. And the process for listing the building individually as a historic landmark is lengthy and would slow the project down. So we always evaluate those if we need that kind of gap financing for the project, evaluating that option. So the answer is probably not, even though we would like the building to be treated historically. We are concerned that the time frame required would be, disappointing to both us, potential investment partners, as well as you at the city.
Thank you.
Raise anything further? Would the clerk please call the roll?
Cummins?
Yes.
McLaughlin?
Yes.
Fritz?
Yes.
Flo?
Yes.
McNally?
Yes. Thank you, gentlemen, very much for joining us, and I think unless you have anything for us, we'll sign off. Oh, wait, looks like your sidekick is here.
I am the sidekick consultant who's been working with the city and the BLP for 2 years on this. So
Thank you very much for your efforts.
My pleasure. I just want to thank the team, CL Lakewood team. Council's deliberation has been very thoughtful, very appreciative, and I also want to thank Pat, who I've worked with. I've been working in Grand Haven on projects before Pat came here, so I've had the great pleasure of working with him over 7 or 8 projects since he's been on board, and just appreciate the collegiality and the efforts, Pat, the creative efforts together. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Greg.
Thanks. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Gentlemen, if you
Thank you.
could, gentlemen, if you could just kind of keep us in a loop as you move through this, so that we know it's, how it's progressing. That's all I'm asking for anyways.
Yes, we'll be meeting at the City Planning Commission next week, and so we'll be there in person next week also, and be happy to sit down and chat with anyone who's interested in hearing more about what's going on, and we'll certainly keep you updated as appropriate, by email.
Okay, thank you.
Sounds great. Thanks, guys. Have a good night. What's left of it.
Good night.
Thank you.
Good night. Okay. All right, nothing in correspondence we have to address. Report by City Council. Karen, you want to start?
I think I've done enough talking tonight, so I'm going to pass.
Ryan?
Just quickly, I want to thank our staff for their work on the composting area. It's very well done. I went out there. There seems to be a lot of really great feedback from folks on that. So thank you, DPW, anybody who's touched, even folks promoting it, right? It all matters. I don't know if we could have some discussion tonight or what work is being done to, what that timeline looks like as far as, what does next steps look like for our city manager search. I know Pat's got a piece on here about city clerk interviews, so we're moving on that. Our firms, or potential firms, are supposed to be submitting by Wednesday, I believe. So, what does our next steps look like as far as what process are we going to use to select the firm? Narrow the list down, interview them, or whatever process we're using, and then. So I don't know if you, Mayor, have any more insight on that, or if we're looking at setting any special meetings. Obviously, summer's filling up too, so we've had challenges with
the scheduling,
gathering,
You're right,
and
Ryan.
I don't think we want to delay this, too much.
No, I'm pretty sure we don't want to delay it. I think that we'll take a look at the results, and I assume, Pat, those will be farmed out to all of us. The results from the RFP?
Yes, I can send those out right away, and it would be, I'm confident you're going to get at least 3. I've gotten confirmation from 3 firms that they do plan to submit. It's up to you whether you want to interview them, or if you want to just select one from the credentials they submit. You could have a special meeting, or you could wait until the meeting on the 20th. I was going to talk about that during my manager report, so now is as good a time as any. Would you like to have a special meeting and do interviews, or look at the results first and then decide whether or not you want to do interviews? That would be
It was a very long list you sent it out to, so depends on how many respond. I think.
That's what it's going to take, whoever responds. And
I think we'd want to get
from
it
there.
down to 3 that we'd actually interview, so we'd probably have to meet.
What do people's schedules look like next Monday?
I think I'm good next
Monday
evening.
I have a meeting.
Monday evening.
Yeah, the audit review committee? Yeah, I'm on that too.
That's in the afternoon.
Right, Monday at 4, so we want to try to do a special meeting next Monday.
like right after the audit review committee?
Yeah, I'm guessing maybe. I don't know, how long does that take, Mike? Any idea?
Hour.
About an hour,
Yeah. 5:30?
We just meet with the auditors and get things in order
Yep.
for them to start their
You want
next
to try
audit.
5:30 Monday meeting, special meeting?
Run out and grab you a pizza.
Does that sound all right? Okay, I say.
Everybody shaking their head yes to pizza.
We really don't want to delay, and by that time, we can all look at the RFPs and see how many there are, and maybe make some decisions Monday.
Okay, we'll get that properly noticed and ready to go at 5:30 on Monday, the 13th.
Okay, that sounds fine.
Excellent, thank you.
Yep.
Thanks, Ryan.
Good, Ryan.
Thank all of you. Yes.
Okay, anything else, Ryan?
Nope.
Mike?
I went out to the fly-in. I tell you what, that was the airport. It was, what a fantastic day it was out there. What was really nice is I seen a lot of young kids out there, young adults that were very interested in airplanes, and some of them were signing up and doing things. It was also watching skydive. Oh my gosh, when they come in, they were in and out and in and out. It was just a packed house for them. So nice to watch when they come down, and when they land, they stand up there probably about 5 feet off the ground. It stops and then just lets them down really easy. I'm just going, wow.
The hovercraft?
It's kind of like that with their chute, but it was fantastic to watch. I mean, if you see them coming down and all of a sudden they're just flying, and then they just circle around and they sit there and just come down. It was really nice. It was a very large crowd. You see our airport is very viable. It's got good things going for it. They were here tonight asking for some direction from us, which is pretty good. The offshore fishing tournament, that was awesome too. I'm telling you what, that really filled up down there. Our beach was full, the boats going in and out, and the tournament itself was a great turnout, good fishing tournament. And on another thing, the reimagination station, I happened to take my grandson down there to take a look at it, and he just absolutely goes crazy in it, but I do see a couple of holes in the material there where somebody could trip and fall. It's right at the end of one of the slides there. If you go in there, you'll see them. There's 2 spots. It's that soft material because I don't think there was enough underneath it to support it, and it just kind of like broke through. So we need to take a good look at that. Also, I want to say thank you to the guys that are getting out there filling the potholes. I mean, we got a ton of them here, but I see them out there doing it, so I want to say thank you to our Public Works Department. And also Public Safety, I want to say thank you for all they've done for us, and keep up the good work. I mean, we had a fire just recently, and they responded very well, so I want to say thank you to them.
Kevin?
Oh, one more thing before I go. I got to mention Detroit Tigers. Yeah, we beat Minnesota, but we didn't do so well with the Yankees. We just got to get the next notch up. There you go.
I've got 2 things to report. One is on Saturday, both Pat and I were out at Sluka Field for opening day of the, what is it? Oh,
there you are.
Thanks, Pat, a lot. Opening day at Sluka Field. I threw out the first pitch of the first game of opening day, and Pat threw out the first pitch of, that wasn't my best windup, I'm just saying. And I'm just going to say I apologized in advance to the catcher, who was very gracious, and it only bounced once. What can I say? And Pat announced, and then, come on, let's see the rest of the photos.
She doesn't have those.
Wait, you don't have those? Those were the best ones.
I'll send them to her, and
All
she
right.
can maybe put them up.
She'll put them up next week, but Pat had better delivery, I'm just going to say. But the kids had a great ball game. The weather was excellent, and it had the added bonus of being able to sit in the stands and watch the skydivers come down, so that was kind of fun. I don't know how far away they land, but we could see them all over the place. The skies were full. And then the other thing I wanted to report on was on Wednesday, I had the honor of representing the city of Grand Haven at the Coast Guard Commandant's Change of Command in Washington, D.C., where for the first time ever, a female service chief was sworn in and took command of a military service of the United States. So from my perspective, it was kind of exciting. And I don't know her. I knew the outgoing commandant, Carl Schultz, and he was an excellent commandant and an excellent person. Linda Fagan, Admiral Linda Fagan, who came in. One of the best stories I think that was told was the outgoing commandant's son was a young officer stationed on a ship and deployed during the ceremony. The incoming commandant's daughter was a young officer present at the ceremony. So the Coast Guard is really a family business, and it really shows the kind of people who serve and the love the people who serve have for it and the respect their kids have for it. So that was kind of fun to see. That's all I got. Pat?
Thank you, Your Honor. There's the second opening pitch, which was
Oh, there
less
we go.
successful than yours.
Yeah, he had a better-
Your throw was better.
But his wind-up was better. Is there another one? Is that the one we got?
No, there was.
That's okay. He had a pretty good action. There you go. That's the one I liked.
Yeah, it looks like I threw it well, but I didn't.
Turns out it's a rather humbling experience. I'm just
Yeah,
going to say.
really. Did a couple things I wanted to cover. Is it my turn now?
Yes, it is.
Thank you. City clerk interviews. Well, I think since you scheduled a meeting for Monday, perhaps we can bring that up at the same meeting and talk about next step in both processes. So I'll plan on sending you. I will send you the updated list. I meant to do that today, and did I send that out?
I didn't see it.
Okay, I did get it today. The updated list that was resumes. The cutoff was Friday, so you'll get a list of all the city clerk applications. There's maybe a dozen of them. So you can talk about that on Monday as well. And I did just want to comment, there was an earlier public comment about our form of government in Grand Haven, and I think it's a very effective form. I think what you have here is a special town. We've had the form of government you currently enjoy since 1915. We were one of the very earliest adopters of the council manager form of government in the United States, and it was a response to a period of corruption and patronage and real problems in local government all across the country. And you've got 107 years now of spotless record, and I think the best town in Michigan, one of the best towns in Michigan. So it seems to be working pretty well for you.
Two best?
Yeah, three best. And it seems to be working well for you. And of course, the idea that a city manager is not, is a fluid thing, I think I've proven that theory wrong. And I think your next manager will as well, that, when you commit to a community, elected officials commit and your appointed officials commit. We've got a great staff. We try our best to keep them around for a long time, and I think you've done a good job keeping your managers reasonably long, and they commit and you commit, and it works well. So, anytime that sort of discussion starts coming up, my city manager radar goes off, and we've got a very strong International City Managers Association and Michigan Municipal Executives who will happily come here and present until you ask them to stop about all of the virtues of having a good, strong, well-managed community overseen very carefully and closely by a responsive and accountable city council that's elected by the people. And it seems to work pretty well. So I just wanted to make that statement. It cut a little deep when I heard earlier that maybe managers really don't care about their communities or they leave soon or something like that. And I think I've done my best to live up to my end of the bargain. So that's all I had tonight, Your Honor.
Thank you, Pat. And I would say you certainly have. All right. This is the opportunity for the second call to the audience. Members of the audience may address council on any item, whether on the agenda or not. Those addressing council are asked to provide name and address and will be limited to 3 minutes of speaking time. Council will hear all comments for future consideration, but will not have a response at this time. Those not physically present who would like to call may dial 616-935-3285. If it continues ringing, please remain on the line until your turn. We will take all callers.
Doug Vance, Copper Post, 100 Washington. Something that came up during the meeting here, the short-term rental thing. Number one, we have 11 apartments that we wanted to turn short-term rental, and we were turned down for that. So if you're going to add an extra fee, there's an opportunity to increase your revenue. And my question would be, why would you take the lowest? I mean, if there's communities out there that are charging 5 or 7 or whatever, go for the max. But my suggestion would be eliminate that altogether and go with a tax. I've owned 2 cottage resorts in Muskegon County, and we were subject to the hotel motel tax. And I was just reading an article a while back about last year, Muskegon County raised over $1.2 million with that tax. I don't know what's involved in instituting that, but that might be something else you'd want to look at.
Doug, the tax is in effect already.
Then why aren't you collecting it from all the Airbnb
It doesn't go
rentals?
to the city.
Only the county, only a county in Michigan can collect a tax. The cities or municipalities can collect a fee.
No.
On a short-term rental.
No, that's a little different issue. There is a hotel tax in effect in Grand Haven, in a district that Grand Haven is in, but the money, it doesn't go to general revenues. It goes to destination marketing by state statute, so that the Visitors Bureau is funded by a 2% tax on hotel and short-term rentals of some of the short-term rentals in town. So
Okay,
the
I
tax
wasn't aware
already
how it
Yep.
was spent or divided, but I just thought I'd bring that up because I know, we paid it and just added it on to our rental fees. But the main thing I wanted to say here was I'm disappointed in the fact that, I've come. You keep talking about raising revenue with parking. I have got residents that are paying for parking and are still being ticketed for parking closest to where they live. I've had 2 of them have their cars towed. And this is craziness. They're residents. That building has been here longer than all of us. It's gone through a number of transitions of different ordinance changes and stuff, I'm sure. But I would just beg you to consider those residents. I'm not a resident. I'm going to get ticketed or have to pay for parking or whatever I have to do. My employees are not, well, a couple of them are, but they're going to have to figure out where to park and walk 10 miles to get to work or whatever you guys come up with as far as paid parking. But the people that live there should be allowed to park just like anybody else does, just because they don't have a driveway. Please give them a break. Thanks.
I wanted to, Lisa, good. I wanted to say one more thing to Lisa, Dora, which is, I know you're short on the Historic District Commission board, and you're on my list too.
Well, and so that's why I wanted to let you know that at the end of the month, we are going to lose 2 more. So we will be 3 people. So that is not a quorum, so we won't be able to vote on anything after the end of this month.
I'll do my best to plus you up. I think I'm working on appointments and reappointments in this cycle, and I got a bunch on this agenda, but I am going to have a similarly long list and maybe longer for the next agenda. And I know there are a couple people who've asked about Historic District Commission, but I'm kind of beating the bushes to make sure we got a robust pool, if that makes sense. So if you know anybody else.
Lisa, do you guys have people that want to be, appointed, or should we send out from a social media standpoint an alert of where we have some openings to the community?
I would love that.
And maybe get a few more.
Yeah, we don't have anyone in the wings that's
right.
applied, so.
I got my eyes on somebody, but I haven't talked to him yet. But I think it would be a good fit if he's willing, so.
Well, we're a 7-member commission.
Yep.
And the end of the month, we will be
We'll be at
3
3.
members in place.
Okay, got it.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Anybody else?
Andrea Hendrick, 1514 Penoyer. I didn't intend on coming out tonight. I had no plans of coming, but after hearing Councilmember Fritz's low blow attacks in the character of Councilman McLaughlin, I felt compelled to come. Councilman McLaughlin ran after continued decisions that led our city to face serious financial challenges. Many of them have been increased during your time on council. Every time that you choose to not approve adequate funding for water and sewer infrastructure, it could be perceived that your votes are bought with those who desire to not pay their fair share of the cost of living in the city. Every time that you vote against even exploring the feasibility of the value of paid parking, it could be perceived that your vote is bought by business owners who don't understand the economics of free parking. I don't think that any of your fellow councilmen are publicly accusing you of that. Since you decided to attack him publicly, I'm asking you nicely to please not make unfounded claims against your fellow councilman who put a legal disclosure for a legal donation that he received. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrea. Anybody else? Okay, I think we're adjourned.
Thank you.
I'm gonna walk. I'm Tom, by the way. I don't know if he's back yet.